Yeah, because remember I had the mirror repair.
Yeah.
Chewy got it later. She was the short.
We're all the way down to the other end.
And I still have birthdays, she just turned out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then we have a little bit of paper.
Okay, I'm just.
I know what he's saying.
Right, I know, right, yeah.
He's out there.
Yeah, yeah.
It's on that like a, it's the Trippian fundraiser or something like that. And I was like.
One minute to spare.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm going to call this regular meeting of the City Plan Commission to order. Today is Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. It is 4:45 p.m. Let's start with a roll call. Let's go around and starting with Will.
Will Sherry?
Dave Caldwell.
Miguel Casado. Cheyenne Manager, Car DPD staff.
Bob Azar, TPD staff.
Sharon Garner, legal counsel.
And I am Michael Gazdaco, Chair. We have minutes from last month's meeting, October 15th meeting. Hopefully you all received them prior to this and were able to review them. If anyone has any edits, please say so now. And if not, take a motion to approve as drafted.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The minutes carry. Director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to say that we're on the cusp of having an adopted comprehensive plan. We expect the council would grant second passage this Thursday night. And we're having a signing ceremony on Friday. You're all invited. It's going to be at 1192 Westminster Street, where there's an accessory dwelling unit that WBNA built. It's going to be in front of that. Just want to say that this was it's really exciting that we got this far. You know, as you know, the council process had a few ups and downs and hiccups, but ultimately we got something that I think we can all be proud of. And we're excited to move into the next phase of reviewing zoning changes and getting those implemented. One thing I wanted to just show you, as we start talking about some of these zoning changes, one of the things we've discussed is design standards and how the comprehensive plan calls for us to be convening an ad hoc committee to assist us with looking at our design standards and our design review processes. I just want to show you a couple of images that will give you a sense of what we've been doing lately with your assistance. So I'm just going to pull this over onto the screen here. You'll remember this is 279 Thayer Street. This was a project where it was reviewed originally and approved as a 4-story building. They came back to you with ground floor commercial and asked for a 5th story. You granted it, but there were some points brought up about the design and about, you know, some of the details. Particularly, there was some discomfort with this decorative band, with some of the materials and the way that, you know, they were going to appear on the facade and so forth. So we spent a little time working with the applicant on this, and let's see if I can get here. And so this is what they came up with. And this took 2 iterations of us sitting down, our design staff and the architects. And I think it responded a lot to the comments, some about, you know, the height and sort of matching, you know, some of the features. And ultimately they decided to remove that band. I think at the end of the day, it's a much, I think it came out better. I think this process demonstrates that, you know, we can, you know, with not too much time and effort, we can, you know, get to a better design. So just something that, you know, we're going to be talking about in the months to come. And I just wanted to show you, you know, how that process played out.
Thank you, Bob. I do wish that Charlotte was here, because I think she'd really appreciate the transformation between the original product and what we have here today. And we appreciate the effort and the time that's put into it. And it's nice to see them, because oftentimes there are improvements, sometimes before they get to us, sometimes after, but there is a lot of effort, and you guys have been doing a really good job of adding design assistance and design review to the applicant's packages. Also, I think it's not, it's kind of appropriate that Thursday, with the second reading and the passage of the comp plan, is actually my birthday. So what a great birthday gift for me.
It was my birthday when the ordinance committee.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're both living this today. All right, with that, let's roll right into the first agenda item. The first case is case number 22-063 MI. It's 322 Washington Street.
And Commissioners, this is a request for an extension of a project that was approved a while ago, and the applicant will explain that context here.
Is that on, Attorney Stoltzman?
Yeah, just speak close to it. It should be on.
Hello, are you getting me? Good.
Yeah.
Well, members of the City Planning Commission, my name is Robert Stolzman. I'm an attorney at Adler, Pollock and Sheehan, representing the applicant LAC Northeast Developer. The property's at 322 Washington Street, as your packet indicates, and we're originally before you almost 2 years ago, December 13 of 2022, where this board approved a preliminary plan for a fully affordable, 100% affordable apartment project. The property is currently an empty lot, parking lot. It's across the street from the public safety complex just west of the highway at the eastern end of Federal Hill. It's a great use of the property, and it's gotten a lot of support from the city. In addition to your approval, we also had ordinance committee approval to put this in the transportation overlay district. We're surrounded by it, so we cleaned up our proposal is to clean up the transportation oriented district lines. So this is all going along swimmingly. Of course, the capital stack, the phrase that we use to put the money together to build the project, private equity, private debt, some public debt from Rhode Island Housing. We're in the queue at Rhode Island Housing. Last year, you may recall, there were over 60 applications, about a dozen received funding. We've been encouraged by Rhode Island Housing to reapply for this next round that's out now. So our request for you today is to give us another year extension, so we can take the project that you've approved and take it back to Rhode Island Housing. We've been tweaking the operating budget and some of the construction budget to make it up to speed with today's costs and hopefully more competitive with our competing applications at Rhode Island Housing. Mr. Shaw may be on Zoom, if you have any questions of him as the principal, but I'm pretty familiar with the project and its financing structure as well. But we're very encouraged, Lincoln Avenue Capital, very highly regarded affordable housing developer throughout New England and elsewhere in the country, but their New England division is very active. They're eager to put a shovel in the ground in Providence, and this location works well. Again, it's just grinding away to get the money.
Every time I pass that on the service road, I always wonder, what's going on? When is that gonna get built? Because we really want it to. Anyone on the commission have questions for the applicant? All right, I don't, other than asking how we can reach out to Rhode Island Housing to make sure this gets built. Can we
Well,
make a positive recommendation to Rhode Island Housing then?
I don't think that's necessary. We're well aware of the project and we support it any way we can.
Okay, wonderful.
The staff and the city's been very supportive, council members, everybody's been supportive. It's just now a matter of pushing all these projects through the funnel and trying to get them done.
And there's a limited amount of dollars in
That's
projects
right.
that can be funded, so. All right, no questions. This is just a request for extension, so take a motion to approve the request. So moved. And a second?
Second.
All right, we'll go around and do a voice vote. Noel? Will?
Yes.
Sid?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Miguel?
Yes.
And I vote aye.
Thank you.
Best of luck. Hope to not see you back next year.
Yeah, our goal, not to see you again.
Okay, it's wonderful. All right. Second agenda item is another request for extension. It's case number 22-051 MI. It's 150 Pitman Street.
Chairman, my name is
Attorney Gary.
Mr. John Garrett on behalf of the applicant. You want me to proceed?
Joanne, would you like to introduce it or?
Oh, no, this is a request for extension.
I'll be happy
there you
to
go.
proceed. So, this one's on the cusp. It expires in December. We think we're gonna have it final approval by December. I certainly hope we will. So it's on the cusp. I just, out of an abundance of caution, didn't want to let it, fall into December and then, we had a little hiccup with the Narragansett Bay Commission getting the permit, but we're about to get that, which was the final item. So we're hoping that, frankly, we're hoping we don't need this extension, but out of abundance of caution, we're here requesting that.
Okay, yeah. I remember this is another one that we want to get built. It's appropriate density for that area, right on Pitman Street. Any questions for the applicant? Take a motion to approve the extension.
Motion to approve the extension for 150 Pitman Street.
And a second.
Second.
I will go around and do a voice vote. Noel?
Aye.
Will?
Aye.
Sid?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Miguel?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Best of luck, Attorney
Thank you
Gary.
very much. Appreciate it.
Moving right along to agenda item number 3. It's a minor subdivision with unified development review. Case number 24-066 UDR 58 Prudence Avenue. Remember, since this is UDR, if you have anyone giving testimony or anyone other than yourself presenting, we will need to swear them in.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Mary Shikarchi. I represent the applicant, who's also the owner. I do have with me the applicant, Carlos Chicas. I don't plan to call him, but he is available for questioning, as well as our construction project designer, David Scott, is with me. Again, I don't plan to call him, although he will be available to answer any questions.
Do you want to introduce the item?
Yeah, sure. Just a quick introduction. So this is a request, as you said, for a minor subdivision with relief pursuant to Unified Development Review. This lot measures about 10,388 square feet, and the applicant wishes to divide it into two lots measuring about 4,454 and 5,934 square feet. And in doing so, they are requesting relief from the minimum lot size requirement, which is 5,000 in the zone, as well as from the lot width requirement, where 50 are required, 50 feet is required, and 40 feet will be provided. This is in the R3 zone. The property is occupied by a 3-family dwelling, and the applicant will be telling you more about why the relief is necessary.
Thank you. If I may proceed, there's a few housekeeping items I'd like to just submit, the certification of the affidavit of notice, with its attachments and a copy of the green card. So, I don't know.
Okay, since this is a UDR, it's a zoning application essentially. Are you gonna be putting on any testimony that you meet the standards for
Yes, actually.
relief?
Yes, if I
Okay.
may. So firstly, if I may begin, for the record, it is our position that under Rhode Island General Laws, section 4524-38, which became effective on January 1st, 2024, applies to the subject property, and the relief we are seeking this evening is not required as a matter of law. However, the city does disagree with us. Specifically under that law, again, just for the record, that law specifically states that a substandard lot of record that does not need any zoning relief if it has not merged and need not seek any zoning relief solely on the failure to meet minimum lot size requirements in the district in which it is located. In this case, we are seeking to subdivide the property back to its original lot sizes. And I'm referring you to part of the package. We have the recorded lot of record plan that was recorded in the land evidence records. It was part of our application. You can see that the city did recognize the lots as separate individual lots, specifically lot 5, which is our lot A on our proposed plan, and lot 6, which is lot B on our proposed plan. Just for reference purposes, lot A is where the current home exists and will remain. There are no other recorded lots of record in the land evidence records, nor any subdivision approvals evidencing that these lots were merged. The city is relying on the tax assessors merging of the lots, which is our position is not legally binding. The tax assessor does not have the legal capacity to merge lots other than for tax purposes. And I'd like to also state that further onto section C of this law, which I will read into the record, provisions may be made for the merger of contiguous unimproved or improved and unimproved substandard lots of record in the same ownership to create dimensionally conforming lots or to reduce the extent of dimensional nonconformance. The ordinance shall specify the standards or a district by district basis which determine the mergers. The standards include, but are not to be limited to, the availability of infrastructure, the character of the neighborhood, and the consistency with a comprehensive plan. The merger of lots shall not be required when the substandard lot of record has equal area, I'm sorry, it has an equal area to or greater than the area 50% of the lots within the 200-foot radius of the subject lot, as confirmed by the zoning officer. This was not confirmed by the zoning officer, but we.
I'm
did-
sorry to interrupt,
Yeah, sure.
Attorney Sakarchi, but I don't think we're here to have a legal argument about this. We're here so that you can present this application with testimony, and that testimony cannot be yours.
Understood. This is just a legal argument for the record.
Okay, well, could you please conclude it and move to
I'm
testimony?
actually completing it right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So based on the, a butters list that was supplied, we had the, analysis of all the lot sizes, so it is there on the record. Of those, 37 lots, 20 of them were, less than the current lot, equal or less to the size of the current lot. The city, does recognize the subject lot as a 10,388 square foot lot, which we are seeking to subdivide into 2 lots as noted on the recorded plat map. Lot A is proposed to be 4,454 square feet. And lot B, which will be 5,934 square feet. We are seeking, a variance for the minimum lot size of lot A. The code requires 5,000 square feet, and we are 546 square feet less. We could have, met this standard without a variance, but that would have created an unusually shaped lot. We could have requested an approval through the 15% administrative modification, but in keeping with the neighborhood, and the original recorded lots, we're seeking this variance. Fits better into the neighborhood. The second variance that we're seeking is the 10-foot relief from the required 50 feet of the lot, which is similar to many of the lots in the neighborhood. 50 feet required, and each lot will have 40 feet. We have reviewed the staff's recommendations and analysis for the standards of both the zoning code and of the comprehensive plan for the subdivision regulations. And we agree with that analysis, and we adopt those findings as part of our presentation. The applicants also review that recommendation, the conditions of that recommendation, and we find those acceptable. At the moment, if you'd like, I can call up Mr. Scott, who can explain some of the reasoning we chose to, which I've further stated, if you like, on the record as testimony as to why we selected the subdivision as we did.
Go right ahead. Just for the record, I think the subdivision as presented makes sense. We just need to hear testimony on the
Certainly.
record to meet the standards of our.
Understood.
Sir, I'm gonna swear you in real quick, so while you're standing up, can you just raise your right hand? Thank you. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? State your name, please.
David Scott.
Say it again.
David Scott.
Thank you.
Mr. Scott, can you just explain how you got involved in this proposal this evening for me?
Carlos contacted me to help him with some of the pre-construction services as far as plan design, survey, and helping him through the process of getting the variance and stuff approved.
So you are a construction consultant, correct?
Yes, I'm a general contractor and a construction consultant.
And you've constructed, consulted on this matter, working with the surveyor, correct?
Yes, I have.
Okay, can you just basically explain the basics of the proposal briefly?
So
Yeah, go ahead.
So we received a call from Carlos saying that he wanted to build a multifamily home similar to some that are in the area. Roughly around 2,300 square feet, multifamily, 2-level construction. We then got in contact with the surveyor and had him put together a plan to compose this and come before the committee.
Okay, and you worked with the surveyor, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and, in doing so, you have this proposal before you to the two lots, correct?
correct.
And that when you, worked with the surveyor, you are familiar with the neighborhood, correct?
Yes, I'm very familiar.
And does this size lot fit into the, character of the neighborhood?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and that's both lots, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You also reviewed the zoning, requirements and standards in the code, correct?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and you also reviewed the, subdivision regulations pertaining to this proposal, correct?
Yes, I have.
And in your opinion, does this proposal satisfy those standards in both the zoning code and the subdivision regulations?
In my opinion, they do.
I have nothing further.
Okay, we spoke to the third standard listed, the granting of the requested variance will not alter the general characteristic of the surrounding area. We still need to speak to the first, second, and fourth standards outlined. Again, we have no objections to this. I'm not here to litigate the merits of what you're talking about and what Sharon's saying. We're here to just look at this application as submitted, but to do so, I need to hear on the record the standards and how you meet the standards for the dimensional variance. Yes, please.
Can you please, so one of the standards is that the hardship for which the applicant seeks is due to the unique characteristics of the subject land and the structure, not the general characteristics of the surrounding area. It is not due to the physical, economic disability of the applicant. So could you explain that the hardship that the applicant created into creating these lots is due to the characteristics of the subject property and not the general characteristics of the neighborhood? Would you agree?
Yes,
Secondly, the hardship is not the result of any prior action of the applicant, meaning that the applicant did not create the the configuration of the property. Is that correct?
yes,
And that the hardship and the granting of this variance will not alter the general characteristics of the area, correct?
correct.
So in your opinion, it will fit into the neighborhood.
Yes,
It
it will.
will be similar to the other homes and sizes of the lots in the area.
Correct.
Let's see. In addition to the city planning commission, part of the unified development requires evidence entered into the record that the proceedings showing that in granting the dimension variance, the hardship will not be suffered by the owner of the subject property. If this dimensional variance is not granted, will amount to more than a mere inconvenience. Do you agree that denial of this request for relief is, will prevent, more than a mere inconvenience to the applicant?
Yes,
Moving on to the, subdivision regulations.
Just again, I'm sorry to interrupt. You're an attorney. I am not, but in chairing many meetings, we found that yes is not sufficient. Now, I know you're going to rely on the testimony or the staff report more than you're going to rely on your witness, and it gives a lot of information here that you can rely on. But we need more than a yes.
Okay, sure. Can you explain a little bit about the general character of the neighborhood? What you see and the typical size? Explain what you've seen in the typical neighborhood, and the sizes of the lots and the homes?
so there's three houses in this neighborhood that are built on a lot either similar to this or the same exact size. The home that he's proposing to build is identical to all three homes that are in that neighborhood, so I feel like this is very conforming for the neighborhood.
Thank you. And the hardship that he faces, is it due because of the, explain why he has a hardship and how it's been created for this particular lot?
Well, I think it was created by, when they merged the lot and then all the,
Yeah, I just want to explain how this created, I mean, is there any other alternative for him? This is yes, no other choice.
no, he has no other choice but to leave it like that.
Right, well, there is one other choice. We could, create a lot, isn't that correct? That would be.
Oh, we create two lots out of this one lot that he has.
What would, and make this,
Well, you could subdivide this lot to create two lots out of the lot that he has there.
Yeah, actually, just a clarification, this proposal has the line straight down the middle. We could have two 5,000 square foot lots, but it would be an irregular shaped lot. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and, but even if we did that, wouldn't we still need variance request here to the frontage?
I believe so. You would need a variance, but
So that this is created, would you agree that it's created due to the configuration of the lot, not any action by the applicant?
yes, I do believe that this was created by the configuration of the lot and the applicant had nothing to do with it.
Thank you.
That's great. You know, like, we're not against this proposal. I'm actually think it's pretty pro forma, but normally when applicants come, they present their case and it's pretty easy for us to approve it. This feels like it's pulling teeth. So I'm trying to help you make sure we put on the record what we need to approve this. Okay, with that, I think we can hear the staff report and then we can open up the public comment.
Mr. Chair, before we hear the staff report, I just want to say for the record that we do disagree with the earlier characterization that relief is not necessary here. The law speaks to the automatic merger of lots, of undersized lots. We don't have a merger provision anymore. We deleted that. So what the law says is we can't require the automatic merger under certain circumstances. We don't require it under any circumstances. Therefore, any argument that we either automatically merge this or we currently have a regulation that automatically merges lots, that's not true. And what the other thing I can say is that while our record keeping going way back is not great, so we may not have documentation of how this merger actually happened. I am not aware in all of my years working for the city and anyone I spoke to who worked for the city prior to my being in the city, I'm not aware that the city ever took any action without the owner's property owner's request to actually merge lots. So any merger that happened historically would have been at the request of the owner. Nevertheless, Joanne is going to read you the staff report that explains why we think you should grant the variances they're asking for.
Sure, thanks, commissioners. And so based on our analysis, what we found is that the hardship for which the applicant is seeking relief from you today is due to the unique character of the property. If you take a look at the plan, you will see that it is unevenly laid out. It has uneven lengths and varying width. And so, which is why you're left with a condition where despite having over 10,000 square feet, which could give you two lots of 5,000 square feet, they will not be able to meet the minimum lot size requirement on one of the lots. And also due to the width of the lot, they won't be able to meet the lot width requirement. So we find that this is not the result of any prior action of the applicant. And just given a look at the area, we find that it will not alter the general character or of the surrounding area. Just as the lots that will result from this subdivision are of a similar width and in some cases larger than most of the lots observed in the vicinity. And we do find that denial of the relief would result in more than a mere inconvenience, as it would prevent subdivision of the lot. So based on that, we recommend that you approve the requested relief from the minimum lot size and width requirements. And moving on to the subdivision, we do find that this is consistent with the comprehensive plan, given that the lots that will result would be in character with medium density residential development land use designation that results in lots that is characterized by lots of between 3,200 to 5,000 square feet. As far as conformance with the zoning ordinance goes, the applicant will meet that requirement subject to you granting relief. However, there were a couple of things that we noticed on the plan. One is that you will see that there is a gazebo that exists that will coincide with the newly created lot line. And the applicant is planning to reduce the area of that gazebo by 2 feet as indicated on the plan. However, we would need that to be a minimum of 3 feet to conform to the zoning ordinance. And also, as you will see, the applicant does list on the plan that there is no impervious surface in the front yard. Just based on our analysis, we do find that to be incorrect, and we do find that it would be close to completely paved. So we would recommend that the applicant bring that condition into conformance at the final plan stage. We don't foresee a negative environmental impact. This will result in 2 buildable lots subject to granting relief, and street access will be provided from Prudence Ave. So based on that, we recommend that you approve the minor subdivision subject to these conditions. And I also should mention, if you do look at the plan, you will see that they will be meeting the parking requirement by providing a second parking space on the newly created lot. And that requires a lien to be filed on that lot, which would designate parking solely for the existing 2-family building. So we would, subject to you approving the minor subdivision, we do require that the applicant file a lien for the parking space on the newly created lot, that the gazebo shall not encroach more than 3 feet from the new lot line, and that compliance shall be documented with the final plan submission. The applicant shall remedy the condition of the front yard impervious surface coverage requirement, and finally, we ask that final plan approval be delegated to DPD staff.
Thank you, Joanne. With that, this is a public hearing. If there's anyone who wishes to comment on this matter from the general public, if you're joining us here in the room, please raise your hand or walk up to the general area where we would need to see you. If you're joining us from home, if you're joining us virtually, please press *9 if you're calling in, or raise your virtual hand in the middle bottom portion of your screen.
We have one person online who wants to testify. This is someone called Elizabeth's iPad.
Okay, Elizabeth, we're going to allow you to speak. Our stenographer is going to have to swear you in.
Of course.
Okay.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
State your name, please.
My name is Elizabeth A. Martin. I am the owner of a 98 Stanton Street lot. Right behind is one of the properties that will be affected by this by this subdivision.
Okay, can you spell your last name for the stenographer, please?
Of course, Martin.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm calling to oppose to this the construction of this multifamily home as it is. That I have been in this property for 42 years. For the last, I think 18 years, I have experienced a lot of disturbance from the people in the actual house, which is a 3-family home. The 3-family home that faces 58 Prudence Avenue has a lot of tenants. They produce a lot of noise. They produce a lot of garbage and a lot of unrest in the neighborhood. I can only imagine if you add another multifamily home to that small lot, which is very condensed, your dimensions that that it might be legal, but when we're talking about the real quality of life, it will be severely impacted, at least mine, because the backyard, my bedroom goes to that area. So as it is, with only 1-family home, multifamily, it's 3-family, but a lot of people live there. And you can check this with the parking that they have a lot of cars, and also with the amount of garbage they produce. So this will, I don't know about the legalities of it. I have heard all the explanations, but to me, a very simple homeowner, it will impact my life, my quality of life severely. So I'm in opposition to this.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Is there anyone else as a member of the public who wishes to speak on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment portion of this agenda item at this time. Guess I would like to ask the applicant, to speak to that. It does say that it's an existing two-family building. It's in an R3 zone. If you look at Google Maps or near maps, you can see that there's a large amount of, pavement, cars, and garbage in the backyard.
Mr. Chiefus, will you please approach? Is he going to interpret? So, Mr. Chiefus has a language barrier. He has his interpreter with
Okay.
him.
We'll need to swear them in.
Okay, so I have to swear you both in. Okay, so could you just raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear to interpret your right hand? Sorry. All right, do you solemnly swear to interpret from Spanish to English and English to Spanish to the best of your ability? And state your name, please.
O-S-O-R-I. Is the last name, so Hannah, so.
O-S-O.
R-I.
Okay, thank you. And now we gotta swear him in, if he can raise his right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And your name, please?
Carlos Chicas.
Thank you.
Okay, looking at the Google Maps, it looks like, there's some kind of container in the backyard or an RV or maybe a sea container or something like that, and a lot of like debris and garbage all around that. Is that the case of the current condition of the house?
Sí, obviamente es un container para un storage. Es un storage container, sí. Es un storage. It's a storage container? You said it's a storage container that they're making back.
So storage containers are not allowed in residential zones.
It's a temporary container. He can move it.
So the applicant would be amenable to adding that as a condition of approval?
Yes.
Removal of storage container and debris in rear yard. I'm guessing, like, well, obviously the pool is going to be removed if you're going to be doing that. The gazebo, I don't know how you're trimming. That's what it looks like from the street view. It's a very, very heavily constructed gazebo, so I don't know how you're gonna trim off a little bit of it, but that's up to you guys. But you're gonna be able to do 3 feet, not 2, as
That is
indicated in the
correct,
plan,
3
correct?
feet.
Okay, and then the rest of the pavement in the front of proposed parcel B will be removed as well.
Yes.
Commissioners, do you have any questions of the applicant?
Along those lines, then the 40 feet on parcel B will become frontage. It has a 6-foot fence on it. There's also not allowed.
That's a fair point. That's right. Yeah, we do see that. So the requirement with new development is if there's going to be development of a new principal structure on the site, the whole site has to come into compliance with all of the regulations of the zoning ordinance. So that's a good catch, Commissioner. They would have to remove any fence that's taller than what's allowed. That close to the
3 feet?
3 feet within 5 feet of the front
All right.
lot line.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it looks like that fence today is fencing off a yard, which, you know, that won't be the case with new construction, but they would certainly have to remove that.
Yes, I would, my understanding is that, if and when a building permit or application is submitted, that would be a requirement to meet all zoning. Obviously, we would do that.
So we wouldn't make that a condition of approval, we'd make that.
Well, it's up to you. I mean, it could be either a condition of a building permit for a new house or a condition of the subdivision.
I think probably a condition of the subdivision, that's what I would prefer. I'm not making the motion, but we can talk about that when we get to deliberations and decisions. Any other commissioners have? Go ahead, Noah.
I just wanted to know what his thoughts were about mitigating the concerns of his neighbor in terms of noise and parking, because I do see the amount of cars here. I'm actually familiar with the property. And I do see the potential for cars kind of being piled up with all the impervious surfaces.
I'm sorry, can you just repeat your question? I couldn't hear that well.
She's wondering, she's wanting you to speak to the neighbor's concern about the noise, the parking, the garbage, especially if you're going to intensify the use of these lots.
Yeah, well, I think, I won't speak for him, but I just wanted to recap what he stated, that he would remove any debris, and he can ask me the question about.
He said to do anything that will get him to build the house.
Can you make sure she speaks into the microphone? We need to
He
make sure
said that
that's.
he will do anything that he needs to do to build a house, and he needs to, that he'll clean up, and that he'll get rid of 2 cars that are in the parking lot. So he'll do anything that it needs to be done for him to be able to build.
Just not germane to this, but is this an owner occupied facility or is it a rental facility?
Owner occupied,
Is it
but
the-
it is a multifamily.
Right.
I believe is it doesn't his children? Yeah, I believe it's a daughter who lives on one of the other units.
Okay.
Family.
Is it a 2-family or a 3-family? It's indicated as a 2-family on the plans, but the neighbor said it's a 3-family. 2-family?
It's a 2-family home.
Okay, thank you. Noel, did you have something else for the applicant?
I was gonna ask about the parking requirement. Is there a parking requirement with the subdivision or is that?
Yes. Yes, no, no, it's required. You need 1 parking space for every dwelling unit. So there would need to be 2 for the existing, and then however many, for the new construction, depending on what it would be.
And that would be upheld or reviewed at the building permit phase, not necessarily at the subdivision phase, correct?
That's right.
So right now, we're just depicting lot B for parking, and later we'll see what lot A.
And lot B cannot be parking,
no,
principal
I'm
use
saying-
parking
Yeah.
on.
No, I'm saying we'll only look. Sorry, lot A. So we're only looking at the lot A's parking requirements, those 2, with the lien on B, but
Correct,
we don't know what the other one's gonna look at yet because there's no proposal as of now.
correct.
Cause I find it's gonna be challenging, right? Cause it says access is gonna be from Prudence Street, right? Which means they're gonna have to find a way to get into that property from.
Yeah, they still have 40 yards of
31.
frontage. They have another curb. If you look at the plan, you'll see another curb cut on the opposite side of that lot.
Yeah, I saw that.
It looks like there's an existing curb cut. That's probably how they would use to get
I think-
parcel B, their parking, but again, we're making sure that they have 2 for the existing 2-family on.
So that's all
parcel.
we're deciding on today, yeah. Okay, just clarifying. Thank you.
No problem. Dave, do you have anything? Sid, you have anything else?
All right, I had another question. This was regarding the back lot line that is abutting the caller's property. Does he have any plans to put in any kind of sound screening, like landscaping, trees, or anything else that would work to mitigate those noise concerns?
And I believe that we're speaking specifically to plan left along the existing 2-family house, those 2 parcels along that side of it.
I'm sorry, where are you speaking of on the plan? Lot A or lot B?
Lot A, the existing house, I believe the member of the public who called in is
Yeah,
on
okay.
lot 410, which is directly abutting that
Correct.
rear yard of the parcel A, proposed parcel A.
I believe at the moment, there is no, landscape, plan in place, but, when we certainly can be added. That's fine. The applicant's amenable to that.
Looks like there is fencing.
I think there is a fence. Isn't there a fence?
It looks like there's a fence.
There is a fence. I don't know if the landscaping would provide any noise. That we it's usually used just for screening or visual.
Yeah, I think it's just the visual and the noise. Whatever you can do to keep your neighbors happy, obviously, is preferred. Anyone else, any questions for the applicant?
Hey, another question would be about, I know this isn't a permit review, but their lot A won't be subject to a permit. Right, it has a house built on it already, but it will not have any.
No, but-
canopy coverage either. At the end of the division.
It has to come into performance with landscape requirements for.
That's actually a good point as well. That, it does not, well, it's hard for me to say based on what I can see. I don't think, I know that it looks like there are some trees on, there's a street tree in front of parcel B, there's a tree on parcel B that probably will have to come
Probably gonna
down.
be removed for that
Yeah,
parking
yeah.
space.
So, I think that's a fair request that both lots come into conformance with the canopy coverage.
So I'm seeing
requirement.
the initial three conditions of approval. I'm seeing three more that we proposing to add if we so move in this decision or move in this direction, which is removal of the storage container and debris in the rear yard, removal of the 6-foot fence along the front yard, and compliance with the landscape and canopy coverage requirements for both parcel A and parcel B. Okay. Any other discussion? Someone could probably say.
Mr.
so.
Chair, when you do move into deliberations, you know me, I need you to put the dimensional variance
Yes.
criteria on the record.
Yes, we're going, well,
And whether or not the applicant has met that criteria.
all right. We will do that.
Thank you.
I guess. Okay, thank you, applicant. No further questions for the applicant, right? All right, let's move into deliberations and decisions. We'll have two votes here tonight, obviously, as our sage counsel has indicated, we need to put on the record to protect the applicant. The requirements for a dimensional variance, for us to grant a dimensional variance, they're all listed here. The applicant has stated some things. So if anyone was wanting to make the first motion, which is the dimensional variance, we could read into the record that, or I could do it and someone could say so moved.
Or perhaps you can, using the standards and the documentation that we put in the staff report, plus what they've testified to, if you could maybe just paraphrase the standards and how it appears that.
We've noted the applicant has put on the record and the staff has put on the record, which the applicant has adopted. The requirements for a dimensional variance, the dimensional variances that the applicant is requesting are obviously that the hardship is due to the unique characteristics of the land. We've indicated that as it's 80 feet in width, not 100 feet in width, and it's similar to other lots in the neighborhood. Again, the hardship is not a result of any prior application of the applicant. They put that on the record. The granting of the requested variance.
I'm sorry, it's not the result of any prior action.
Prior action of the applicant,
Okay.
and they put that on the record. The granting of the requested variance will not alter the general characteristics. Again, that was put on the record. The lots are feet in width, surrounding these properties. And then, the dimensional variance, the hardship will be more than a mere inconvenience. And again, it would prevent the subdivision of the lot. The applicant has said that that would be a hardship. So based on that, we would recommend that the CPC approve the relief from the minimum lot size and lot width requirements. Someone could say so moved.
So moved.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
I will go around and do a voice vote. Noel,
Aye.
Will,
Aye.
Sid, Dave,
Aye.
Miguel,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Now, on to where is there it is. All right. The minor subdivision. We've discussed the standards and they've been put into the record. My recommendation based on the testimony we've received, and what we've discussed here today would be that we approve the minor subdivision, subject to the following conditions: that the applicant shall file a lien for the parking space on sublot A to meet the parking requirements for the existing dwelling. The gazebo, number two, the gazebo shall not encroach more than 3 feet from the new lot line, and compliance shall be documented with the final plan submission. Number three, the applicant shall remedy the condition of the front yard impervious surface coverage requirements for both lots. Number four, removal of the storage containers and debris in the rear yard shall be completed prior to final plan approval. Number five, removal of the 6-foot fence along the front yard to comply with fencing regulations in this zone shall be completed prior to final plan approval. And number six, compliance with landscape and canopy coverage requirements for both lots shall be evidenced by final plan approval. And number seven, final plan approval shall be delegated to DPD staff.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we'll go around and do a voice vote. Noel?
Aye.
Will?
Aye.
Sid? Dave?
Aye.
Miguel?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Best of luck. Moving right along to another major, well, this is agenda item number 4. It's another minor land development project. This is case number 24-060 MI. It's 551 Chalkstone Avenue.
Sure, thanks, Mr. Chair, and I can provide a quick introduction while the applicant gets set up. So this is a request for preliminary plan approval for minor land development project consisting of a mixed-use apartment building with 23 apartments, as well as some commercial use on the first floor. So the applicant is requesting dimensional adjustment in addition to preliminary plan approval for the proposed height of 5 stories and 55 feet, where 50 feet and 4 stories are permitted by right in the C2 zone. So, yeah, the applicant's here and they can walk you through.
Hey, welcome.
Good evening. I'm David Sisson, 345 Taunton Avenue in East Providence. I'm the architect for the project. I believe our owner is on Zoom, and we may also have our civil engineer on Zoom. You guys will have to check. I'm not sure if he could make it tonight. And I'm here with.
What's his name?
David D'Amico is the civil. I'm not sure.
Okay.
If you're here, just raise your hand so that we
Yep.
can see
So
you and promote you.
we have Simar Sodi.
Yes. right.
Yeah, okay, and then David, I'll promote you to a panelist as well.
Thank you. And I'm here with Abid Sufan from my office, who's going to give me a little assistance with giving you guys product samples and stuff like that tonight. Yep.
Just do me a favor, and when you're speaking, speak into the microphone. We record these, we have viewers outside of this room. We want to make sure we get the
All right, I
record.
just want to make sure I'm sharing it. Okay, here we go. So I wanted to share our drawings with you, and this should be the same packet that we all have. And we did just hand you an updated packet. This is based on, our discussions with the city, and I'd like to thank the members of the staff for all their hard work and attention they've given us for this project. We did have some discussions and they asked for some really fairly minor design changes. And so, but we wanted to make sure that the members of the board had the most updated, design that we have today. So, this project is located on the corner of, Camden and Chalkstone in, Providence. And that's, almost exactly at the corner of Chalkstone and, Smith Street. And so, one thing about this site that we noted, and I'm sure we're going to get around to talking about, parking at some point. This site is very well located, to get to Kennedy Plaza and also the State House. And we think that, and I believe our owner will speak a little more towards the proposed tenant mix, but we think this is a very well located site for this development. And the site is a little bit north of 4,000 square feet. I think it's 4,087 square feet. It's a corner lot. It's in, I believe, the C2 zone. And we're proposing putting a building on it of 5 stories. It's a little bit more than 3,500 square feet per floor. And the building would have a basement. First floor, I'll go to the floor plans here so we can kind of walk through. Let's see. So we got basement, which would include bike storage and also tenant storage down there and also utility rooms. First floor, which contains a small commercial unit on this side, which is right on Chalkstone Ave, and 1, 2, 3 apartments on the first floor, as well as a trash room for trash and recycling. We'll be wanting to put a curb cut so that the trash can be pulled out of the building. And then on the upper levels, 4 more stories, floors 2 through 5, with 5 apartments per level on that. The lot is relatively narrow. The way we've designed this building is to front on Camden and Chalkstone streets. And along the shared property line, we've put a fire rated wall along that side, which basically that side contains our stairwells at each end and our corridor that connects them. Doing a building with a common corridor and apartments off both sides wasn't really feasible on such a narrow lot. We are requesting from the city some encroachments so we can put some bays out over the sidewalk. We've had good discussions with them about that. We'll be requesting encroachments for footings and easements for footings along shared property lines. And we've had very good conversations with the butters regarding that. Also likewise with the city for footing encroachment along the street property lines. Here's our elevation along Camden Street, Camden Ave. We have in the application, and it was just discussed that we are asking for, of course, the waiver for the 5th story and 55 feet. When we, after we met with the city the last time, we clarified that number a little bit, and I'll zoom in on our height diagram right here. They are actually closer to 53 feet, 52 foot, 10 and 1/2 inches. That's taken from our average grade to the top of our roof. So 55 is really more to the top of the parapet, a little bit higher, okay? Happy to answer questions about that. We're not asking for any variances, just the request for height, beyond the request for height, both in terms of stories and 5 feet or 3 feet. Let's see, I'll flip through these a little bit. This is our elevation from Camden. We have some bays, which are sort of these dark gray rectangles. We see another bay, which would face on Chalkstone. And so that would be this elevation right here on this side. Again, a bay here. Along this side, we do have these red canopies that come out and give sort of a bit of a streetscape to this project. And our commercial entry is here on the left-hand side. And we have two residential entries, one on Chalkstone right here, and also one back on this side on Camden. This door here is for our trash room, so that's not transparent, that would be an opaque thing, but we want it to look glassy on that side. I'm gonna go to the renderings of the building. This represents kind of the main view, more from the intersection of Chalkstone and Smith. How the building would be seen, and I think it's maybe a little more clear than the elevations show. The block up the back, the zebra stripes are very intentional. We're planning on concrete block for those, and it's a ground face concrete block, two alternating colors. And I'm gonna have Abid send around a couple of samples of that block right now. The block is a ground face, so it is a very high quality block. We're not talking about gray concrete block. We're talking about a much nicer quality block. And it's what we call a high R block. So it's actually an insulated concrete block along those. It's very thick. Beyond that, in terms of exterior materials, the gray sort of corner here, and the majority of the building is what we call nichiha, and so that's a thick cement board product, and comes in a wide variety of finishes. And we're using that for almost everything. The gray corner, which is sort of a wood look material, the brown, which is also a wood look material. And I'm gonna zoom in here a little bit on just a little bit of the building. The gray panels here are another gray Nichiha material. And the dark gray, we're considering two different materials right now. We put in the application hardy panel, but we've got a Nichiha that's almost exactly the same color. And we'll probably go with that. We're sort of debating that. Abid's going to send around a sample of both those materials.
My understanding is that you've been working with the Department of Planning, their staff, and working on the design elements of this.
Correct. We've had multiple discussions with them about the materials and the design of the building. Pardon me. Zooming on that there. Windows by and large are a residential window. We haven't picked a manufacturer yet, but it's something like an Anderson 400 series. Of course, down low on the streetscape, those would be a storefront style window, like a EFCO or Colony or somebody like that. So that's what those guys are down there. More of a commercial entry system. I'm trying to think if I've got anything else to explain to you guys about the project. Happy to take some questions, and if there's anything I forgot, happy to share with you.
Okay. So just the overall unit mix, I think you said it originally, but you have one commercial unit. How many storage units, how many bike spaces, and how many residential units?
Absolutely. So what we've got, let's start with bike spaces. That's very easy. We've got a bike room in the basement right here. And I wrote 12 bikes on the plans that I gave to you, but we actually checked in the office today, based on the ordinance, you require 2 feet by 6 feet with an access way. We have 10 spots down there. So that's double what's required by ordinance. Ordinance requires 5. We're providing 10, and we're also providing some outlets down there for e-bikes. So folks can have an e-bike down there. Right next to that in the basement, we have 25 larger storage units, one of those for each of the tenants, plus an extra one for the owner's use. Those are certainly also large enough for bicycles. The question, of course, will come up about parking. We're not required to show any parking, and we're not showing any parking on this site. We do believe we're in an excellent location for not showing parking because of the ready availability to bus routes. I believe there are 2 bus routes that run to this site. The bus stops are literally less than a block away, and they both go, at least in the direction of the city, they both go to Kennedy Plaza. The other direction, of course, they go other places. And it is within walking distance to and we put together, let's see if I can share this. I'm sorry, I can't share it right now. But we put together a little idea of how long it takes to get places. The State House is a 6-minute bus ride, a 7-minute bicycle ride, and an 18-minute walk. The same trips over to Kennedy are a 15-minute bus ride, an 11-minute bike ride is closer, and a 30-minute walk. So those are kind of our distances to what I think would be common, at least work destinations for what we anticipate to be our tenant mix there. Going upstairs, you asked about unit mix. On a typical floor, we have 3 1-bedrooms, 1 2-bedroom, and 1 efficiency. And on the first floor, we have 3 1-bedrooms. So I'd have to do the math on that real quick as to our total unit mix. We'd have 4 2-bedrooms. We would have 4 efficiencies, and then the balance would be 1-bedroom apartments for that. So that gives you an idea of who we're expecting in the building. It'd be a small family perhaps, or somebody who does work from home in the 2 bedrooms. And then the 1-bedrooms would be couples or single folks. And our owner may want to speak a little more to expected tenants and expected tenant mix. We do have an elevator in the building. There is the elevator overrun that you see. It really doesn't show up, from anywhere. We'd see it. It doesn't float that much above the roof line. But we do have it on the building right here. We of course have rooftop equipment. We're anticipating the building is going to be exclusively heated and cooled by electricity with municipal type systems. We will be running gas to the building because we're required to have a backup generator for the elevator, and we'll have gas for that generator. And we will also, if needed, the commercial unit would have gas available for that. But we're not anticipating gas usage for the apartment units. I think that about covers it, unless you.
So the roof is just mechanical and roof hatch, shaft, generator, et cetera. The roof is simply for mechanical use and.
That's correct. There's no roof deck, certainly no tenant use of the roof. Mechanical equipment and maintenance use only.
Perfect. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Are these all gonna be market rate rents?
That's our anticipation right now.
Do you have any idea what those rents would be?
I'll let the owner answer that question. I would imagine, typically with my owners, and she can confirm this, typically we're seeing that they're going a little bit below market rate, providing a very nice apartment for a decent price on that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, David. Hello, everyone. This is Simmer.
Hi. Can you just state your name for the record and your affiliation?
Sure. I am Simmer Sodi, and I'm the owner of this lot on 551 Chalkstone Avenue.
Thank you.
Yeah, so as David mentioned, we are looking at a tenant mix, which would be maybe students, young couples, young professionals who work in downtown Providence, work with the state, or are going to school, Brown University, or are even working in like the Massachusetts downtown area and can jump on the train fairly easily from this location. I'm not sure about the rents, but right now we would be offering little bit affordable rents, maybe like $1,500 for a 1-bedroom unit, $1,800 to $2,000 for a 2-bedroom unit, something in those ballpark.
Simmer, I wish to clarify, when you say affordable, you don't mean the technical term of affordable, you mean rents that are maybe below market rate, correct?
Little bit more competitive as compared to market rate, yes. Yes, that's what I meant.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant before we hear the staff report and open it up to public comment?
I just wanted, I understand there's no requirement for parking, and you mentioned that as well. And the location, to your point, is relatively ideal with all the access to public and walk-in, but I think it's reasonable to assume that there will be people with cars. You think of shopping, I think there's one grocery store which is up on Smith Street, but there isn't a lot of grocery stores walking distance, so they would have to either have a car or Uber, I suppose. So my question is twofold. One is for people that do have cars where they can't park on Chalkstone, there's no parking over there. So they're gonna have to, I assume, park on Camden. And two is, have you thought of, Uber and Lyft? Because if they don't have cars or they get in deliveries, where do you think that would happen, I guess, in your anticipation?
So, as I mentioned before, and you did remind me of one other thing, which I wish to tell you guys before I answer your question. We are working to have a meeting with the city councilor for this. We've scheduled that. Unfortunately, we weren't able to schedule with her until tomorrow, so we're holding that meeting with the city councilor. We intend to have a community meeting about the project after that meeting with our city councilor. So unfortunately, this is a little bit cart before the horse in terms of that, but our intention is to have those meetings. But to answer your question regarding cars and parking, as I mentioned, we don't have any parking on the site, and we're not anticipating we don't have a place for people to park. So if tenants have cars, they would need to seek parking passes from the city and park in the neighborhood. Regarding Uber or Lyft, I mean, we're not providing anything special for them, but if the city would grant us a drop-off spot or something like that, that would be wonderful. We would love to see that at the building itself. I think that was all the things you asked me, correct?
Yeah, and again, you're not required, but there is concern because it's already hard to drive up Chalkstone, going towards Smith Street. It's a tight street in that section of Chalkstone as well. And any added cars is gonna just add to that, the bottleneck, especially in the mornings, in rush hour. But it's more, I guess, the comment because there's no requirement, but.
Any other questions for the applicant before we hear the staff report and open up to public comment? Okay, thank you very much.
Should I stop sharing for you guys now?
Oh, yeah, you can stop sharing now. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, Choyan, take it away.
Thanks, commissioners. And so the applicant's spoken about the dimensions and design of the building as well as their request for dimensional adjustment. And we find that they are eligible for that adjustment as they meet the criteria for dimensional adjustments outlined in section 10005B of your development review regulations, because they are providing vertical mixed use with over 50% of space dedicated to residential use. And the applicant did speak about the parking as well as the environmental impact, and we should note that they will be meeting the canopy coverage requirement by planting street trees. And that plan shall be subject to the city forester's approval. We do find this to be consistent with the neighborhood commercial mixed use land use designation of the future land use map of the comprehensive plan, which encourages multifamily residential development and creation of new housing. As discussed, this does conform to the use of the C2 zone, and they will conform to the dimensional and design requirements subject to you granting their requested dimensional adjustment for height. The applicant will meet the bicycle parking requirement as well as landscaping. We don't foresee a negative environmental impact. This is a buildable lot with no constraints of development, and vehicular and pedestrian access will be provided from Chalkstone Ave and Camden Ave. So based on that, we would recommend that you grant the dimensional adjustment, finding that the applicant is eligible through provision of mixed-use development. And then we recommend that you approve the preliminary plan subject to these conditions, that the landscaping plan be subject to the city forester's approval, that the stormwater and erosion control measures be subject to the city engineer's approval, and that the applicant obtain all necessary encroachment permits at the permitting stage. And finally, we ask that final plan approval be delegated to DPD staff.
Thank you, Choyan. All right, this is a public hearing, so at this time, we will open it up to public comment. If you wish to speak on this agenda item and you're here in the room, please raise your hand. And if you're joining us virtually, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 if you're calling in.
Okay, we have Cameron online.
Oh, Cameron.
Not sure if it's a Cameron we're familiar
I
with.
assume it is, but let's get the introduction. Cameron, you're unmuted. Go ahead. Oh, you muted yourself, it looks like. Cameron, can you hear us? I see a little microphone. It looks like he's.
Yeah, Cameron, I don't know if
He or she
if
is-
your microphone is working. Maybe check your audio settings, but we're not hearing you.
We've heard other people who called in.
Yes.
Cam, you want to give it one more try?
We heard a little
something.
static.
There was like a little.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, my Bluetooth driver wasn't working. So
Cameron,
yeah, I just like
please state your name for the record, even though we already know.
sure, it's Cameron Lafreniere. I live at 115 Butler Ave, Providence. Think this is a good development. It's nice to see some development in the northwest of the city along a bus line. I would just like to note that it is possible to fetch groceries without using your car if you don't live in walking distance. It's something that a lot of people in the city rely on right now. And as we see the urban trail network come further into this area of the neighborhood, I do think that it will become less likely for people to want to drive and get in their car and go to the grocery store. It's a pretty miserable experience if you ever go to Trader Joe's. But I do think it's nice to see that the storage could be store bikes. I'd like to see one-to-one bike parking, and I think it seems like this allows it to be met. And it's nice to see no public money spent, and seems like a good project. So strongly in support, and I hope the developer the best. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hang on one second. Is there anyone else here in the room who would like to speak on this project? Anyone else virtually? I don't want to touch anything and break it. There is one more.
Yeah. All right, Alyssa or Eliza?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Elisa. I'm actually here for the next thing, but I just wanted to ask about the parking. They mentioned that they could park in the neighborhood, but there's no overnight parking. So how does that work exactly? And also it's a burden to expect, residents to have to shoulder, cars on their street like that, especially if there's no overnight parking. So thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Are there any other members of the public to comment on this agenda item? Okay, and there's no other members of the public in this room. So seeing none, we will close the public comment portion of this agenda item. First of all, just to answer the last caller's commentary or question, this isn't a C2 zone and parking is not required, so the applicant is not providing any. If it was required, they would have to provide it or ask for relief. The only relief they are asking for here is a dimensional adjustment, which is for height and additional story. They're not asking for any parking relief or parking adjustments because none are required. Right. Commissioners.
Well, that said, we recently saw the school development and Camden Street came into question because of the traffic of the buses. And that project was approved, and this will just add, that's the intersection that was difficult to resolve in that one, add 60 more units to the intersection. It's gonna, and there's vacant lots next to it, so
there's
I can see other things coming down the line.
There's a project under construction right next door. That's the mass that you see with the wall in the renderings. But again,
even though it doesn't have anything to do with our scope of decision making, but I just want to put it out there again, right? We keep running into these traffic problems created by the density, and I don't know if they're in the new plan.
Well, the new comp plan, and there's no removal of parking, as was discussed in some areas, but the goal is to move towards reliance on move away from reliance on automobiles in some cases. So we're not requiring parking for this parcel. It's not under the requirements that we can mandate at this point because it's not required in the C2 zone. Mr. Azar.
Yeah, I just want to, this always comes up. Every development, with every development, there's a discussion about parking and traffic. And we made some decisions in the zoning ordinance, 10 years ago when it came to the question of parking for small lots in commercial zones. If we were to require, if we want any kind of density in our commercial zones, you're not going to get density if you require parking. Any amount of parking. If we required 1 parking space per unit, you'd be lucky to get 2 units on this lot. It's a small lot. So, this is the challenge that we face. If there are people who come with cars, they're gonna have to figure out where to put them. And, we don't guarantee that people are gonna get a parking space on the street. We do allow for overnight parking on the street, but again, it's not guaranteed. I agree that this particular area is pretty constrained. But again, it is a commercial corridor. It is walkable, it is bikeable, it does have access to other modes of transportation. And this is how you get high density development along commercial corridors. You do it with little or no parking.
Other commissioners, any comments, discussion? I mean, overall, I think this is what we've been looking for, is a commercial, a dense residential project in a commercial corridor. They're providing first floor commercial, which makes them eligible for the dimensional adjustment for the additional story, and I have no issue with the additional story. I'm in favor of this application.
Yeah, I'm in favor of it too. I think the only question I kind of wish Charlotte was here, just looking at A5.1 on the plans. I'm not a designer or an architect by any means, but.
That's the big wall, I assume, the concrete block wall. So that is along a property line where there's another property directly adjacent to it, so there can't be any openings on that wall for building code, and there's gonna be the same on the other side of that wall. So they're gonna be pretty close together, and it's not gonna be really
It's
apparent.
not gonna be a massive billboard of.
No, it's not, no.
Okay. Yeah, no, otherwise I love that it's all electric, there's bike parking, the storage is great, I think it needs sort of thing before.
I can't believe Dave hasn't brought that up yet.
Counted the condensers in the roof.
You did? Okay,
It's Mitsubishi.
all right, there we go. See, he's happy. Well, then any other, so we need to take two votes on this. The first would be, the dimensional adjustment, that we grant the dimensional adjustment for height, given that the applicant is providing first floor residential or mixed, or sorry, first floor commercial, or a mixed use development. Okay, so moved. Perfect. Second?
Second.
All right, we'll go around and do a voice vote. Noel?
Aye.
Will?
Aye.
Sid?
Aye.
Dave? Aye. Miguel?
Aye.
All right, and then, the preliminary. I did, I voted aye, I'm sorry. Aye. I may have forgotten to vote, I just said it in my head. All right, and next is the preliminary plan, which based on the testimony, and the plans and submissions by the applicant. And we've already granted the dimensional adjustment that we would approve the preliminary plan subject to the conditions laid out in the staff report. So moved. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we'll go around and do another voice vote. Noel?
Aye.
Will?
Aye.
Sid? Dave? Aye. Miguel?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Your application is approved. Best of luck. Now, before we move on to the next agenda item, neglected to introduce our new commissioner. We have a new commissioner in our ranks this evening. I want to welcome Sid McKenna. Welcome to our meeting. And just a little housekeeping. I know you're familiar with planning and land use. But you heard us on case number 3 with Unified Development Review, which is a little bit different than that last one, which is just a land development project. Now, under Unified Development Review, that's when we're acting as the planning board and the zoning board at the same time, to get a project through. They need dimensional relief, not adjustments that we're allowed to make as the planning board. So in that, we acted as the zoning board and the planning board approving the subdivision and the dimensional relief required. And in the minor land, in a land development project, there are certain dimensional adjustments that we're allowed to grant if the applicant does X, Y, or Z. So that's what we did there. I didn't fully bring you up to speed on that, and I apologize. We guys kind of ran through it like normal. But with that, if you have any questions as we go along, feel free to ask. Megan's great, Bob's great. We're all here to help. And
Sharon.
sorry.
I
I know. We have 2 attorneys. That's Sharon. And if you have any questions, ask either of them or Bob. They're always willing to help. With that, we will jump right into agenda item number 5, minor land development project, case number 24-062 MI 663 Admiral Street.
I'm going to introduce this one, and if there is someone from the team who's going to be sharing this screen, usually that's what we like to see. Is anybody prepared to share a screen on your team?
I can just move through the CPC website.
It might be better for you to do it just because it's easier for us not to have to,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, so, just to introduce this, for some of you, this is gonna look familiar because it's a project that you've already seen and that you've already approved. This was approved a few years back as a major land development project. And the approval expired, actually not too long ago. But the applicant has come to us and wanted to revive it. It is, now, a new project under the new rules. It's actually a minor land development project, but it's still, the same project. The zoning is the same. The layout of the project is the same. This is a, mixed-use development. It's 5 stories. It's got ground floor commercial. It has 48 residences. It has internal parking on the ground floor. They are looking for a dimensional adjustment for height, just like the last one. They want to go 1 extra story over the C1 zones, height limit of 45 feet and 4 stories. They're also requesting an adjustment for parking. 48 spaces are required, 31 will be provided. This is on a couple of lots that they'll have to merge. One of the lots to the rear of the property is in a residential zone. They're using that for accessory parking, and the apartment building does not sit on that lot in the residential zone. They have to comply with the regulations of both zones, and we'll talk later about how they manage that. So I think that covers it. And thank you, Dylan. I will promote you to a panelist and you can toggle through the
Thank you.
presentation.
Does that work?
Yep.
So Dylan Conley on behalf of the applicant, Citadel Properties. I do have with me today Eric Zwena, principal on behalf of CDS, and the lead architect, as well as Louis Gentili, project manager on behalf of Insight Engineering. As Bob just explained, this is a lapsed application. We haven't changed anything. I'm going to try to keep my presentation very tight, but very happy to be responsive, and it can become very expansive on the application when and if necessary. The one thing I did want to add is we did have the we are no longer requesting a waiver because we do have and have submitted the detailed here they are. Landscape plans. They are electronically submitted. I have a paper copy for everyone. I can hand that out. To the extent that it is of any interest, the original master plan approval was on December 14 of 2021. It's recorded in book 13413, page 84, and the original preliminary plan approval was on July 19 of 2022. Book 13706, page 255. The approval did lapse. Essentially, the delay was related to challenges of the banking industry, specifically the interest rate environment. And the lapsed approval was due to a little bit of confusion on when and how an approval does best for a longer period of time. The demolition was performed on the site as a result of the original approval. But regardless, we're here this evening. So again, just a summary and a refresher. I think this was the existing commercial structure you see here. These are all the lots here. It's sort of by the corner of Admiral and River. It's the corner of Admiral and Gloucester, but it is over by River by the sort of LaSalle Bakery area down towards that end of Admiral. You can see the parking layout, the ground floor parking layout, and the 2,500 square feet of commercial in the front. It's 5 stories. It's mixed use. It's almost entirely in a C1 zone. This area in the rear here is in an R2 zone. We're using that area. You can see some canopy buffer and some additional parking. All of these pavers are permeable pavers. It's 5 stories, 63 feet, 3 inches in height. We're not requesting any variances, but there are 2 dimensional adjustments. One is for the height for the additional story. The other is for a parking reduction. There's 48 residences. We're providing 31 parking spaces, so it's a 17 space reduction. It's about a 65% parking percentage. We are allowed to request reductions down to 50%, but we're only going down to the 65%. You can take a look at the layout that we have here. We've basically tried to create as many parks as humanly possible without going into a garage with a sort of a dig out and subterranean structure. We did extensive studies on that in the original approval. We were working to kind of boost those parking numbers, and it just isn't viable at the site. There are some grade issues and some cost issues that just make it impossible. Let's see if there's anything else. So this is sort of the structure that we're looking at. I can bring up Eric for more details as may be necessary. Here are your elevations. But yeah, so largely it's identical to everything that we've seen before. The as was the case in the previous master plan and preliminary approvals, both in terms of DPD and CPC in their final findings, as favorable as to each of the standards. Those standards are specifically consistency with the comp plan. We have a favorable recommendation from DPD staff. We agree with all of the content within that recommendation. But going through those points, consistency with the comp plan, this is a neighborhood commercial / mixed use zone. Mixed use multifamily specifically encouraged in that area. It does meet the goal of H2 new housing. The second standard is compliance with the zoning ordinance, specifically to the use. Multifamily mixed use is by right in this area in the C1 zone. And in 2B, it's by right with adjustments for dimensionality. Again, no variances or modifications being requested. Those adjustments just identified are the height and parking. Height and parking are always very intertwined in any of these C1 zones. It's the way you get to parking is through the additional height, and then the density of the parcels. You try to provide as much parking as you can with the size of the lot layout that you do and how efficiently the naturally occurring lot does park. So we've maxed out parking on the ground floor. In terms of environmental impact, again, we agree with everything within the DPD's favorable recommendation. Something that's near and dear to my heart and I think is important is that infill projects are the best form of development in terms of the environment. We're using existing infrastructure. We're taking advantage of areas of density. When we talk about environmental impact, I think locating structures of density in walkable areas. Its proximity to Providence College is very walkable. Its proximity up and down both Admiral and River is very walkable. We're on a bus line. We have all the bike spaces that are required. So we think in terms of environmental impact, this is an excellent project, especially when you consider the building that used to be there. But within the context of what will exist once we're done, we think it's a positive. And the one other factor regarding environmental impact in this area, the student population always creates sensitivity with neighbors. I think one of the greatest challenges of the student population is the design of the building that they live in. If you have a large backyard and it's not a supervised building, you're going to have a party house. If you have a building that is monitored 24/7, if you take a look, there's no decks, there's no common areas, there's no way for noise or parties to really occur within the confines of the building. And even if they were occurring within the confines of the building, there's no way for that noise to get out and to bother neighbors. So we think what you see with these sorts of buildings that are designed so that they are not nuisances for neighbors, it's a strong positive impact on those sorts of nuisances. It's not that we're specifically targeting that demographic. In fact, we are targeting sort of a more work from home adjunct professor. We think it really works for professors that may be here for a couple of years. It's got that proximity. It'll be new build. We don't think there really is a peer for a building like this in the area. But regardless, that was a concern at the last series of hearings, so we want to make sure we address that right out of the gate. We've designed this so that nuisances are not created. We've designed this to reduce nuisances in the neighborhood. The fourth standard is a requirement that we create a buildable lot. An administrative subdivision is actually contemplated as a portion of this. We'd be merging the existing lots to make one single lot, which is the entire layout that you see here. And then street access, obviously we have really strong street access on the corner lot. That's both Admiral and Gloucester. But I think predominantly when we talk about street access, we're talking about, how will the building interplay with the neighborhood? And we think it's structured in such a way that it will have a really strong pedestrian quality to it. I think people are gonna be walking to and from the building, walking throughout the area. It's very doable, and we think that the sort of corner lot approach and the sort of density that is in this area is something that's sorely needed in this neighborhood in general. It's something that we see very commonly in other areas of the city. This type of construction has become very common throughout the east side. And we think bringing this level of quality to this neighborhood is something that has been wanting. I do, again, have Eric Zuena and Louis Gentili here if we want to get into the details on any of those things. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, I would love to just respond to any public comment at how it comes up. Or questions from the commissioners.
Of course.
Yes, okay. Well, I'll kick that off then. First of all, it's interesting that you're here for basically a new approval instead of a request for extension like we had for the first two applicants, because now we have to take everything into account again. We have to read everything into the record again. That's kind of unfortunate, given that nothing has changed. But we have new commissioners on, so we have to do the whole thing again, because it is a new application. The last one has expired. Now, just a few big questions. So you're not asking for a waiver for the submission of a landscape plan, but I assume you'd be amenable to, if we were to approve this as a condition of approval, that the landscape plan shall be subject to the approval of the city forester.
No problem at all.
That's what I would change number 2 to in the city's recommendations. The couple of questions on the floor plan. Unit 110, the tenant space, it looks like that's your first floor commercial. Is that still the plan there, adjacent to the lobby on the front?
Yes, it'll be first floor commercial.
And what do you anticipate that being used as?
We don't have a specified tenant at this point in time. It may end up being a leasing office for the owner, but at this time, we don't know.
So a leasing office for the owner is not a commercial space separate and apart from the residential uses. That needs to be a leased out commercial space for you to get the adjustment for the additional story of residential. And I just want to make that perfectly clear that that will be a commercial use, not a rental unit for the building.
Agreed.
Okay. On the additional floors, you have listed on each floor an amenity space, 290 square feet. You don't, your applicant does. What is that space? I can't recall what that was for, and I remember having a discussion about it. But it was, my memory isn't what it used to be.
I would have to confer with the architect and the owner on the amenity space. In my memory, we had the original design of the building, it was a large interior of amenity space, and then that had been removed.
Yeah, we're seeing 290 square feet of amenity space on every floor above the first floor on these plans. Here's Duenya, you want to just introduce yourself?
Sure.
Thank you.
Eric Swin, I'm managing principal, ZDS Architecture and Interiors.
That amenity space is just a small, workroom, phone room, living space. Really not exactly defined at this time.
Living space?
Not a dwelling unit, but just a, small sitting area, for lack of a better term.
But we're not gonna try to squeeze an additional unit out of
Absolutely
that
not.
space.
Absolutely not.
Okay, and is it going to be?
I don't think it's big enough to.
Right, no,
Try that.
Yeah, we've seen people do more with less, or try to. So is it just, we've heard on your initial, going back to 2021, concerns about this being student housing and having places where students gather and make a lot of ruckus and things like that. Is this going to be just open to whoever? Is it gonna be key fobbed? Is it going to be?
Definitely fobbed. I mean, the owner, not to speak on behalf of ownership, but they police their buildings very, very closely. Again, I think because some of the units are a little bit smaller, I think this is a place to do some reading or to do some study or to, it's access, the way it's accessed off the corridor proves, I think, that it won't be an actual dwelling unit.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry for not having better clarity on how that's furnished,
No,
but it
it's
would
fine.
definitely be a small,
Okay.
communal room or floor.
As far as bike storage, number of units, required bike storage, and how many are you providing?
We meet code. I think we exceed code, and I'm gonna do a quick glance at some of these plans. to answer your question.
It looks like 8, maybe 9 spaces you have just with the lines that I'm counting.
Yeah, yeah, this code compliance sheets at the front end of this package that I could, answer that question clearly and accurately.
I just want to confirm that, put that on the record, because there was some concern about parking in this building. Making sure that we're meeting the codes that
10
are.
10 bicycle spaces in the building.
I only see 8 or 9 there on that first floor. I could be miscounting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, possibly 9. It is small, but that's all I'm seeing.
I think the idea is that those lines are representing double loaded bike storage, devices. The goal is to meet code, and that's exactly, I think the goal is to exceed code. It's stated to be 10 spaces, so, I think it's our job to make sure that we're getting 10 or plus or more spaces in that room.
Okay, a question that may have to ask Dylan on this one, just for the record, are these units going to be rented by the apartment or by the room? Because we see a lot of bedrooms on these and we talk about student housing a lot. Is the intent to rent these as apartments?
The intent is to rent them each individually as an apartment, not by the bedroom. And any rental arrangement will comply with all local ordinances, law, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, other questions you have for the applicant?
Yeah, this is by no means designed to be dedicated to student housing. This is,
Understood. Understood. We know that there's a strong student population in this area of town, and there has been discussion, and it hasn't been negated by the applicant either here or at the previous meeting, that there will be students living here. It's not student housing per se.
Right.
But it would be attractive to students.
Right, we certainly wouldn't turn them away.
If nothing, we can always reserve the right to further questions and hear the staff report and open it up to public comment. All right, thank you very much.
All right, and so commissioners, we can jump into the staff report. The applicant has spoken about the dimensions and site design and how they comply They are requesting a dimensional adjustment from parking, which we will talk about soon. They did withdraw their request for waiver from submission of a detailed landscaping plan. And you see the submit plan before you, and we would ask that that be reviewed by the city forester prior to final plan approval. They did provide a drainage plan, and that shall be subject to review by the city engineer. And also they did speak to tenant management and how they would take care of the environmental impact surrounding this building. So based on that, we would recommend that you grant the dimensional adjustment for height as well as parking, finding that the applicant meets the criteria outlined in the development review regulations as well as in the zoning ordinance. We should point out that the site is in proximity to public transport, bike infrastructure, as well as commercial areas that can be accessed via foot. So based on that, we would recommend that you grant that adjustment pursuant to making positive findings. And as we've said, they have withdrawn the waiver, so we can move on to the actual plan. This is located within the neighborhood commercial mixed-use development designation of the future land use map, where mixed use as well as multifamily development is encouraged. And the applicant will conform to the use requirement of the C1 zone by providing mixed use. And also, we should point out that a portion of this lot upon merging will be zoned R2. The applicant will be providing parking in the rearmost portion of the lot. And this will be accessory parking, so it is permitted in the R2 zone. They will comply with the dimensional requirements subject to you granting the requested adjustments, and they will meet the parking requirement subject to you granting a dimensional adjustment. And based on that, we don't foresee a negative environmental impact. Upon merging the three lots, this will result in a buildable lot that can accommodate the development. And street access will be provided from Admiral and Gloucester Streets. So based on that, we recommend that you approve the preliminary plan, finding it to be in conformance with the zoning ordinance and comprehensive plan. Subject to these conditions, the lots shall be merged prior to final plan approval. The landscaping plan shall be subject to the approval of the city forester. The applicant shall obtain necessary encroachment permits at the permitting stage, and we ask the final plan approval be delegated to DPD staff.
Okay, thank you very much, Troyon. Before we open up to public comment, do want to mention that we have one member of the public, Colleen Colarusso, who we have received a note from prior to this meeting. We've all received that, and we're in possession of it, and we can talk about that at the end. And we'll open it up to public comment at this time. If there's anyone here in the audience, I see we have a councilwoman from this district or this ward. I guess we'll start with councilman. And if you're joining us virtually and you'd like to speak and you'd like to be put in the queue, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 if you're calling in.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. My name is Shelley Peterson. I represent Ward 14, which is the area of Elmhurst and Wanskuck. Smack dab, actually right in the middle of where this project is going to be, is going to be developed. I wanted to start out by saying that this project originally, in its original inception, way back in 2020, when it was brought to the community, was met with some significant resistance. And I really do appreciate that the developer has come back and had a couple of iterations that have been a lot more successful with the community. One of the things that I think the developer and I share a vision in is what Admiral Street in my community would look like. And I appreciate that this particular project has a commercial leasing, a commercial property component or a building that could be used for commercial rentals. I think that that's something that we need to do more in the ward, and I applaud the effort. I do come with certain questions and concerns from my neighbors, mainly on much of what you've already discussed, which is who we're actually going to be renting and leasing to. It is very much a concern in my area. A lot of the feedback that we have received just and we've done a very basic community engagement. I want to thank the developer Joe for being willing to come to a community meeting that I'm having next month, where he has been invited to speak to explain a little bit more about the property and what's at stake. The community has spoken often of just how quickly an expansion of student housing has happened in my ward, and my ward has been directly hit as a result. By including students in the potential of a housing project this large, and pushing, and I say pushing because it's really starting to navigate into a completely different area of the neighborhood. I do worry that we're going to continue to just expand our continued problems. I've been very public in my asks of support from the college to help mitigate certain issues that we have, including not just in the off-campus housing areas, but very simply in the areas where the college hosts games and the tickets to people that attend, you name it, whether it's outdoor lacrosse, soccer, hockey. Hockey is a very big promoter in the area of parking in just pretty much anywhere you can find. And we have a large issue of continued parking concerns that never seem to get sufficiently taken care of. I think while I understand the need for the parking adjustment here, I do think that not having enough parking in this particular area, and also being so close in proximity to the college, we can continue to see that our problems are just going to just continue being. And that is a little bit of a problem for my constituents and the neighborhood over there. One of the things that we often see just from the college having games right along the perimeter of Admiral Street, because the hockey arena is there, we have people that park along the side streets pretty significantly, pretty often, blocking people in driveways, making the streets extremely narrow to the point where emergency vehicles can't get through. It's the reason why we've had to change certain parking things in certain parts of the neighborhood just to be able to try and sustain how much car density we have. I'm afraid that the issue that we might continue seeing is that people will just utilize the side streets to park a little bit further and a little bit more, and then we just continue expanding on our parking issues without actually finding a solution to them. The other piece that neighbors have come up with or have presented is with regards to some of the environmental concerns that were there before, mostly once the demolition happened. And I'm not privy to this, so I'm not aware, but this is just in response to a letter I received from a constituent, that there were some environmental violations in the moment of building, or I'm sorry, in the moment of demolition, and creating situations where asbestos was very prominent, or people had just recalled that was a continued problem in the area. These are obviously things that have since passed, but these are very much concerns that people continue to have as construction will start to resume, and we want to make sure that the constituents are in full understanding of what's at play here. The very last piece to this, and this isn't something in the scope of work of what you do here in planning, but it is something that is extremely important to my community, is the affordability component. A median rent in my area is now at $2,700, and that is done we're in an area where you see most of the housing that was once single-family housing now becoming multi-units or larger properties, it is something of a daunting fact that our constituents are consistently worried about, that they're going to be priced out, or a family member is not going to be able to continue living, or some continued predatory buying that has been happening will continue happening as these larger developers continue to expand. So these are all things that have come up in conversation for my constituents, and I want to make sure that this is all presented to you. While it's understandable that there's not much that we can do from this point, it is important to convey the concerns and the questions that the community has.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I appreciate you coming to testify today. Is there anyone else here in the public who would like to speak on this agenda item? Mr. Bulgarian? And then we have a few people in our virtual world as well. Do you want to give him the mic? Yes, so that, yeah, that would be great. Well, we'll need to grab from him when he's done.
Yeah. Thanks. Great, Gary. I just have a couple of questions. Excuse me. In terms of number of bedrooms in each of the units, how many are efficiency studio, whatever you call them? How many are one bedroom, how many 2 bedroom, how many 3 bedroom? I didn't hear that mentioned.
Give me a list of your questions and then we'll go to, we have other people who have comments or questions, and then the public comment portion is not a back and forth between.
I understand that. And you know that I am not a fan of tall buildings in neighborhoods. One of the beauties of Providence is that we have heights that are human scale. And we've decided that by having some commercial on the first floor, you're automatically entitled to another story. And I guess that's because we don't have a minimum number of square footage of commercial space that qualifies you for that. That seems to be a gross discrepancy. I mean, if we're gonna say, well, if you have commercial on the first floor, then you can add another floor of residential, then it ought to be commercial on the first floor. Not a little bit of commercial on the first floor, and the rest residential, and you still get another floor. I was a fan of the 1951 zoning ordinance, which is the one I grew up on. Small little green booklet, if you read it 2 or 3 times, you had to memorize. 3 stories, not to exceed 45 feet. That was the dimensional overall throughout the neighborhoods. Downtown, obviously taller. The argument was made that back in 2014, that's when it got changed. Well, you can really squeeze 4 stories into 45 feet. So we're gonna make it 4 stories. Now the ink wasn't dry on the zoning ordinance, the 2014 zoning ordinance, that people started requesting a 5th story. And that is not human scale. I'm very troubled by that. What I've suggested in the past, and I will suggest it again, is that if the city is intent on having taller than 3 stories, let alone 4 taller than 4 stories, that there ought to be a correlation with the width of the street that we're talking about. Harvard has refused to put that correlation in there. So that's very troubling. So those are my concerns, and I'd be interested in hearing the answers to my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else here in the room that would like to speak? If not, we'll move to the virtual room. All right, moving on to the virtual room.
Okay, we have Elisa Graydon. Elisa?
Yes, hi. Could you let Andrew Poyant go first? Because he has to leave. I don't know if he's still online.
There is someone called Andrew. Yeah, Andrew, if you want to go ahead and testify. You can speak now.
Thank you, Lisa. Hi, yeah, I would like to, my name's Andrew Poya and I live in the neighborhood. I would like to like kind of give a little background back in 2021 when this was originally brought to the commission. There was a hearing in November and as the members should know, um, the city only allows for dorms to be on campuses or in downtown. Downtown is the only neighborhood that allows that. It was very clear in the November hearing that Strive, which predominantly rents to students, is planning on using this building as an off-campus dorm, is designed as a dorm. It's going to be a dorm. The chairwoman at the time was very clear at the end of that hearing that they needed to come back with a new design that would make it so that the building was no longer designed as an off-campus dorm. And then something happened between November and December, and all of a sudden it was approved with very few changes. This still is an off-campus dorm, however we want to call it, that's what it is. That's their Strive's primary clientele. I would definitely, as my city councilwoman has mentioned, rent in our neighborhood has significantly increased. The cost of buying a house has significantly increased. If any of you, I would invite all of you to come by our neighborhood, and Strive very proudly puts their name on all of their houses. And you can see just how much they have already bought up in our neighborhood. And it makes it, they've increased the rent for anyone who is looking to rent, have made it significantly harder for anyone to buy a house. Regular people can't compete with them to buy a house. And they're going to continue to use this building for off-campus student housing. We should really be pushing our universities to build more on-campus housing instead of continuing to have students move into the neighborhoods and put pressure on the housing market. And after it was approved in December, they then got a permit to demolish from the city's inspector's office. They did that without having an asbestos certificate and doing asbestos abatement prior to it. They then went forward with demolition without having done any of that. The EPA ended up coming out and fining them $24,800. That is all public information. You can look that up. And this is the type of company that we're dealing with. None of their workers had any protective equipment to protect them from dealing with dust and asbestos in doing the demolition. And there was nothing being done in order to protect the neighborhood. I don't want to see this approved. My questions are, if you do go ahead and approve this, who's going to be assuring compliance that this doesn't end up being student housing and that this doesn't end up being a off-campus dorm, which is not allowed in the neighborhoods?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll go back to Alyssa.
Alyssa, you can go ahead and speak.
Oh, hi. So I was at the prior meeting that Andrew was talking about, and I also, it struck me when the representative for Strive tonight was talking about nuisances, because really they are the nuisance in this neighborhood. We have, if you go on Admiral Street and drive from Hawkins all the way up to where this is proposed, almost every single residence is owned by Strive, and it's all students for the most part. They are all, they really have, they like to talk up their connection to this neighborhood, in their community and the tenants. And as Andrew mentioned, when demolishing 666 Admiral, they were found guilty of multiple environmental regulations, including asbestos and lead abatements during demolition. They leave hazardous construction sites. One time I was walking by a building, a house they had recently demolished on Admiral Street, and there was just glass everywhere and literally wires hanging from the building. I have photos that I could submit of that as well. So what's going to happen when they build a 5-story, 48 unit apartment building? What are the construction sites going to look like? What kind of materials are they going to use? Are they going to ensure that their workers are properly using the right protection? Um, you know, what corners are going to be cut that jeopardize, basically the students that are going to be living there and the surrounding community? I don't take these violations lightly. My husband's a lifelong resident of Wanskuck. He's had a brain tumor, and it is not, it's not considered genetic, it's environmental. Wanskuck is an environmental justice neighborhood. And I don't see by approving a building like this, how this is anything as, that would be any kind of environmental justice to the people that work here, considering the violations that they've continually had and the problems they've had with their neighbors. And they also, they regularly receive tax breaks from the state and the city for their buildings. Strive Lofts, there are a lot. I've heard that, no, I heard actually there's a website you can go to. You can see how many are temporary rentals. Many of those are now Airbnbs. I don't see how that contributes to the housing crisis in Providence. And we're basically rewarding bad actors in this city. You can pollute our neighborhood in our air and the ground, and you can still get a tax break from the state and the city, and that's fine. And we'll encourage you to build more. And he has another project in Centerdale, Rhode Island that was also state funded. That's still sitting empty since 2019. I do think that something needs to go up on 66 Admiral. But do we really want to reward people that are, bad actors and that, they are the real nuisance of this neighborhood? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. I don't see anybody else with their hand raised.
Okay.
I did want to address one of the questions from one of the
Well, with that, we'll close the public comment portion of this agenda item, and then we'll go back to answering comments or responding to some comments from some of the public comment here. Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about this issue of housing, dormitories, and students. This building is a collection of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. Every unit is self-contained with kitchens, bathrooms, and bedrooms. There are no shared bathrooms. There are no dormitory style rooms without bathrooms or kitchens. So this does not qualify as a dormitory. If students live in it, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a dormitory. A dormitory is a function of the way that the building is laid out, with individual rooming units that don't have kitchens in them. They may have bathrooms and suites and so forth, but this is not that. Now, with regard to students, landlords are allowed to rent to college students who live off campus everywhere in the city. There are some restrictions in the single family zone in single family houses where no more than 3 college students are allowed to live together in that arrangement, but we don't have any such regulations in the commercial zone. And even if we did, none of these units, to my knowledge, has more than 3 bedrooms, assuming 1 person per bedroom it's unlikely that you would see, any given unit with a large number of occupants or students. They can rent to students, they can rent to other members of the public. There's, so as far as zoning is concerned, this is a multifamily dwelling and it's a permissible use in the zone.
Thank you, Bob. I guess just going down the list of a few comments. Grant asked the number of bedrooms that's in the plan set on G 0.01. We have 12 one-bedrooms, 22 bedrooms, and 16 three-bedrooms for a total of 48 units. You discussed the being commercial as being an incentive. We are discussing changes to the design waivers that we grant. That will be coming forward over the next few months, and I think Bob maybe will be talking about it at the next agenda item, based on zoning changes that we're discussing based on the comp plan that we're assuming will be approved on Thursday. I was here in November 2021. I was the vice chair when this originally came by. Christine West was the chair. I remember that they did redesign the building. I can't remember exactly how it was, but there was more common space. There was more, I believe there were even balconies that faced out to the street that we were concerned about. I can't recall if there was a roof deck or not, but there were multiple areas that we were concerned about, large groups of students potentially gathering if it became an attractive nuisance, so to speak. So this is the revised plan that they did get approved in the end. We have had discussions previously, which is something that I hope we'll continue to discuss and try to figure out how to rein in. We've talked about when we see a developer or someone who's active in development throughout the city come before us, that we're not allowed to really, there's no methodology, there's no law that allows us to take into consideration how they acted with X, Y, and Z. We're looking at this application kind of in a bubble. And there has been discussion of maybe opening that up in some way, shape, or form to try and take the action of an applicant outside of this and their performance in our city into account, because I do think it's germane to how we see them, and I think we'd get a lot better performance on existing properties held by certain landlords throughout the city. I'm not speaking of this one in particular, but we do hear that frequently, where we hear neighbors concerned about how an applicant is treating their properties right down the street or has done this in the past. There's nothing for us to do today, but it's something that we can continue to discuss, and maybe Sharon can help us craft some things that would pass legal muster, but right now we don't really have them. And lastly, before I get off my soapbox, colleges and universities are like a double-edged sword. We love them. They bring vital employment, activity, sporting events. We've heard people, like how many people are attracted to these hockey games and basketball games, and with them they also bring students, which bring additional economic revenue to the city. But they also, again, with the double-edged sword, they bring challenges as well. And each university deals with them differently. This particular development I like more than the applicant buying up every single family house along that block to put college students in. I think this is a much better use of real estate than that. The alternative to something like this with high density, a building here, we're talking about 48 units with a lot of bedrooms, so they could fit a lot of not just students but members of the public looking for housing. If we required all schools to contain their housing on their universities or their campuses, that would also cause those universities to expand out into the existing neighborhoods that we're trying not to demolish. We're trying to keep that neighborhood culture. So it's really a double-edged sword in some ways. So I hear what everyone's saying about their concern, but I think their concern about this adding to it is actually misplaced. I think this is going to help alleviate, hopefully, alleviate some of the stressors on the existing neighborhood and the existing single and two-family houses that are in this area by providing density, which this, obviously, there's a demand for this. Otherwise, they wouldn't have bought up all those houses and rented them to college students. So that's my soapbox. I just wanted to speak to those, and let's go around to other commissioners. Sid, you're first off.
Within the spirit of the bubble that you just talked about, it is in their plan here under tenant management. There's a line that says, per the plan, management will consistently monitor the building and set rules for resident behavior. And this also came up in one of the comments. What is the mechanism for what's the metric, or who's managing that management? And I think since they put it in the plan, I think that's a legitimate question.
And I believe it would fall to code enforcement. Obviously, the city council representative for the area would be a part of that as well.
But I'm sorry to interrupt, Michael. What I'm saying is that they're saying that they will constantly monitor and set rules for resident behavior, but like what's holding, yeah.
And who's gonna inform that?
Yeah, like, are they setting the standard of that? Like,
I
what's
remember
resident behavior, and then who are they held accountable to outside of code enforcement? But
I remember there was a pamphlet that was given in the 2021 hearing. I don't see it here in this application, about those specific items. I'm wondering if the applicant has that or is able to provide it. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the question. Our intention is that this application is identical to our previous, so the materials that we used in support of that application, we have no objection to those being required. I could probably put up on my computer, but it would take me a few minutes. I don't know exactly where it is as I sit here.
The owners here, can we put something on the record about what the plan is to mitigate the nuisance of potential harm to the surrounding neighborhood?
Sure. Do you mind if I go through some of the other questions that were raised in public comment as just you may have addressed unit mix. There were other matters as well. Do you want me to?
There were other items that were not necessarily under the purview of us. There was discussion about potential EPA fines and things like that. We're not here to discuss that right now.
Okay.
We don't issue building permits. We don't issue demolition permits. That's under another portion of the city. I believe I spoke to it by saying that I wish we had a mechanism to speak to it in these hearings, but I don't think that it's under our purview as it currently sits.
Okay. All right, I'll go talk to my client about specifically addressing what those elements may be, and I can try to pull it up on my computer as well.
Great, thank you. Other commissioners, comments? Questions?
I did want to get some clarification from what Bob was defining as dormitory, and I'm not familiar with this, so I'm just asking for clarification. Is that when you said it had to, if it had a kitchen, bathroom, et cetera, it wouldn't qualify as a dormitory? Is that correct?
Well, more to the point, so we don't actually define dormitory in the zoning ordinance. We say that dormitories are allowed on college campuses, but we don't specifically spell out what a dormitory is. So, but what they have presented to us meets the definition of a multifamily dwelling. So, which is complete, it's a collection of 4 or more dwelling units, each dwelling unit being complete living arrangements for a household that includes living, eating, sleeping, cooking, etc.
Yeah, because of all the things, I agree with a lot of the things that the chair said. in regards to past behavior, code inspection. I mean, unfortunately, it's not within our purview, even though it's a nuisance to the community. And I appreciate the feedback we get from folks in regards to that. But the dormitory thing was the one that probably was most concerned to me. If it's a de facto dorm, because I lived in a dormitory that did have exactly all that, and we called it a dormitory. I don't know if that was accurate, but it was an apartment, but it was all students. In my case, it happened to be owned by the university, so if that's the defining factor, then that's the defining factor. But if it's, if it's gonna, let's just say it was 100% all students, all the concerns that people have of having a dormitory in the community would apply. I don't know how we would enforce that once we leave here though, but that's, it's an impact on the community and intensifying I don't want to say popular, but intensifying activity that's already a concern to folks. And we can't look at the past of what, they could have any businesses and decide to change it just for this project in theory. But when you hear that it's a business that has catered most of their properties to students, to suggest that all of a sudden this is going to be different without any real evidence to suggest that so it's a little hard. It's like, I feel like it's going to be student housing, but yeah, I don't know.
Well, whether it's student housing or not, it's allowed to be student housing. And if if every bedroom in this apartment building has a college student in it, we would still consider it to be a multifamily dwelling. And which is allowed. This is indistinguishable from several, relatively new apartment buildings in the Fair Street area that are owned by private entities. And you're right that you could have dormitories that do have cooking facilities and in suite bedrooms, and there are blurry lines between the two things, but from my perspective and from the perspective of the zoning ordinance, if you have an apartment that has bedrooms, a kitchen, and bathrooms all self-contained, it's an apartment. And if it's 4 or more, it's a multifamily dwelling. That's what this is.
Chairman? Yeah, it looks like the applicant is back for discussion on maybe what
Do
we
you mind
spoke
if
about before.
I think he's going to respond to the management strategies that we have presented in the past. I just want to echo, I appreciate Mr. Azar's feedback, and we, as the architect, have done nothing to support a student housing scenario. In fact, if you look closely at the plans, much different than what was provided in testimony, is that these are full appliance package kitchens. There's islands, there's waterfall edges. This is a market rate unit for the general public in every sense of the word. We already responded or heard someone respond or download the matrix and the unit mix. But just in spirit, I just want to point out that as an architect of record, we've been the architect of record for other multifamily projects that have been done by this client. And those are not student housing. They're all reputable market rate deals. So the few instances of these tenement houses, I can't speak to them. My firm has had nothing to do with them, but I just want to go on record to say that this client does have other multifamily projects that are not student housing. We never were asked to design a student housing facility. We were always asked to design a market rate, beautiful unit in a beautiful building on a commercial corridor that we think deserves density. That was our task, and that was the lens that we looked through going through this design process. Lastly, I'll say that we picked this up after the design had already been started, and it was presented to you. It did have balconies. It did have all these different ideas that we as a design firm did not support. And this is the culmination and the result of all that discussion and thought and design work that we put into the project. So I just appreciate the conversation that the board is having, and here to answer any questions about the intentions from a design perspective of what this is supposed to be. And just lastly, we're contracted to perform construction administration services. We also have bank debt associated with this project because of its size and value. So there will not only be inspectors and building officials that'll be walking this property through the construction process, but we have a professional responsibility to make sure that everything is done per code, that everything is in light of protecting the general public, and that all the building materials that are being used are all things that are per building code. And the banks will also expect us as a licensed professional to sign off that that is exactly the case through the entire construction process. So again, very different from a tenement house renovation, but I just wanted to speak to this project specifically. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Dylan, I assume you're gonna speak to the student.
I am, and I was able to pull up that list that we remembered from the previous application. I have submitted it to staff. I also have it up on my screen. If I can share, I can walk through it. But we are very happy for a condition of approval to be this tenant management plan. Here we go. So it's a 3-page plan. We talk about sort of the design, the limitation of the common areas, the pains that we'll be going through on resident selection, how business operations monitoring, controlled access, how surveillance and internal surveillance occurs, rules and regulations, including restrictions on visitors. I think that's really important for the sort of party question that you generally hear about in terms of nuisances. And another about addressing community concerns, reach outs that occur. I will say, and I had submitted this. I know that we probably don't have the time to read through every word right this moment, but the other reality here is it's 48 units all enclosed within each other. A building of this scale is its own community. So the property owner has a responsibility, not just for any given one of these units, but for all 48. So when any one apartment gets out of control, that's a problem for the 47 other units. The whole building will fail. If any one of these units is allowed to get out of control, it's a problem for the entire floor. It's a problem for the whole building. So the incentive here for anyone that's actually going to manage a building at this scale is to manage it very tightly, very conservatively, with very serious focus on making sure that you get releases, that you're not having constant turnover, that you're not losing tenants because the people next door are too angry. Excuse me, people next door are too loud. So there's huge financial and economic incentive to make sure that there are not the nuisances that are common in the other areas. And if I can just zoom out a little bit, I think we've heard a lot about how the student population in general is spreading out into the neighborhood at large. I don't know if we have the ability to share the GIS. I don't. GIS, it doesn't work for me at this time of day. But there isn't any area near here where you can build buildings like this. So Providence College spreads out in a way that's distinct from our other universities because you cannot build buildings like this. There are so few locations in the immediate vicinity of the college that you can build an apartment building that you don't. So what happens is 2 families and single family homes, some 3-family homes get soaked up by the student population demand. And because there's much less density per square foot, density per acre by those sorts of uses, it spreads out further and further and further, right? So if you think about an apartment building of this scale, it's almost like a sponge soaking up that demand in a focused area where it can be controlled. So our response to all of the concerns being raised is we hear you. We are participants in the neighborhood as well. There are problems for us as well. This is our solution to it. We think that we greatly reduce nuisances in the area by having a building designed to not cause nuisances. at a density that pulls people out of residential neighborhoods and into the commercial zones where density belongs.
So if you scroll down, you're gonna have someone like posted 24-hour calls, 24-hour monitoring. You said within 20 minutes at all times of day that someone will respond.
Yes,
So that's part of your management plan.
yes,
And you're putting this on the record with this application.
yes, and I have submitted this exact document into the
Okay.
record.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up, Sid. That was a salient point. Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant? Or actually, we're beyond that. Any more discussion amongst ourselves during deliberations, discussions, and then getting to decision?
We have two motions, right?
Well, we have one motion. We don't have to do the waiver. So we have dimensional adjustments and we have the actual, the plan, the two votes, yes, not three. Let's have Choyan put exactly on the record what the dimensional adjustments are, how the applicant is eligible for them, and then we can discuss and or vote on them.
Sure, thanks, Mr. Chair, and I want to just quickly refresh the board on what exactly the applicant was requesting and how they were eligible for it. So they're asking for two dimensional adjustments. One is for a height of approximately 63 feet with 5 stories, where 45 feet and 4 stories are permitted by right in the zone. They're also requesting a dimensional adjustment from parking where 48 spaces are required, but 31 will be provided. And so we did find that they met the criteria for dimensional adjustments based on section 1005B of the development review regulations, and they are eligible for those based on provision of internal parking as well as mixed use with over 50% dedicated to residential. So I just want to get it on the record so that we know what exactly is being voted on.
Okay, so the applicant has requested the dimensional adjustments. We've just heard about the test, or we put on the record how the applicant is eligible for them. And I guess this time to make a motion to approve them if we so feel the need. So moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, let's go around to a voice vote. Noel?
Aye.
Will? Sid?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Miguel?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So next we will be looking at the approval of the preliminary plan, finding it that to be in conformance with zoning ordinance and the comprehensive plan, based on the testimony given and the staff report. And it should be approved following with the following conditions. One, that the subject lots shall be merged prior to final plan approval. Number 2, the landscape plan shall be approved by the city forester. 3, the applicant shall obtain necessary encroachment permits at the permitting phase. Did we want to say anything about Airbnb units? That was discussed as someone in the member of the public had discussed that, and currently if we don't say anything, it's allowed under law because it's in a commercial zone.
Can we do that
We've done it before.
on this one?
I think you can put conditions of approval. Now, it's actually, it's an interesting question as to, you've done it when it comes to zoning changes. You've made a recommendation that any zoning change for example, to an R4 zone, not allow for short-term rentals. In this particular case, it is an allowable use. You're allowed to put conditions on your approvals, especially when you're granting things like dimensional adjustments. If you feel that you know, in granting the extra development capacity that you want to ensure that this is for, you know, long-term housing and not short-term housing. You know, I think they're, you know, I guess the answer is I'm not sure. My understanding is that they're representing this as an apartment building. You can ask them.
They are, and they put in the record that they're even staggering their year-long rentals terms in this document.
Do you want to ask them if they intend to use this
Do you
as short-term
intend
rentals?
to use this as short-term rentals, and would you be opposed to a restriction of short-term rentals in this property?
So as I sit here right now, there's no intent for short-term rentals. I would be opposed to the restriction. Restrictions need to be reasonably related to the relief being granted. I also think that the elephant in the room on every single project I work on is the bank. And banks react very poorly to restrictions. So without an ability to confer with lenders, I just don't know whether or not it's a problem.
So I've dealt with enough commercial lenders that I know it's a residential development. They're looking for leases. They're not looking for short-term rentals, unless that's been your business model and you put your pro forma forward implying that it was your business model. So
it is not in our pro forma.
Yeah, then your bank shouldn't be concerned about a restriction on short-term rentals.
Yeah, I don't think the bank would be an issue either, but I do have concerns with doing that because what are the reasons behind doing it for this application and how do we go
Well,
forward?
my rationale behind it is that we're granting additional density and additional size and with the concerns of ourselves and the neighborhood that they won't be able to manage the residents they have if they have short-term residents with less stake in their building. I'm concerned that the additional density isn't warranted.
Would that be, so you want to put a limitation on a percentage can't be, or just 100% no short-term?
They're requesting dimensional adjustments from us, and this is something that I think we should be able to get in return.
And Attorney Conley did suggest that this is a community, and if there are disruptive tenants, then it affects the entire building. If it's short-term rental and you have disruptive tenants who are disruptive for the 1 or 2 nights that they're there, and then they're not there anymore, and then there are new disruptive tenants.
Yeah, that's not a community.
That's not a community.
Can you stand by that?
Yes.
All right, good. I feel good. So then number 4 would be, short-term rentals would be prohibited, at this property. And number 5 would be final plan approval should be delegated to DPD staff.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
One second.
All right, we'll go around and do a voice vote. Noel.
Aye.
Will.
Aye.
Sid.
Aye.
Dave.
Aye.
Miguel.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Best of luck. Now moving on to the final agenda item, which is something I really enjoy speaking about. I was just thinking it'd be a little bit earlier, is agenda item number 6, comprehensive plan. It's a discussion of the comprehensive plan status and potential zoning changes.
Mr. Chair, we wagered that we'd be out of here by 7:30. That's less than a minute from now, so I could go through this in less than a minute.
No,
but I don't think that would be doing justice.
That's not worth it.
But I will be brief. I just want to sort of describe for you what our strategy is for advancing zoning changes once the comprehensive plan is adopted. We have been working on them. We have a little team that includes planning, inspection and standards, and the law department. And so we've gone through the comprehensive plan and found every item that relates to zoning changes. I'm sorry, Mr. Delgarian, would you mind taking it outside? Thank you. So what we've done is we've we're proposing to do this in two phases. One that we think will be relatively straightforward, where there's not a whole lot of sort of discretion within the comprehensive plan about how we achieve this. And then a second phase where there is some latitude that's going to require us to do a little more study, and also some of the more controversial items. We want to save those for later, so we can be a little bit more thoughtful about it. So I'm just going to walk through what we intend to bring to you in December. And then I have a couple of questions for you. So first of all the map changes that we're proposing to do, they're in the comprehensive plan. Those maps are there for all to see. There's an interactive map online. The comprehensive plan says make these map changes. I would argue that there's not a lot of discretion there. Those are the base zoning maps. And then when it comes to the overlay district maps, there are something like 42 changes that we propose to the historic district. Some of those are removing properties. Some of those are adding properties. Of the adds, there are 3 that are being done with the consent of the owner. The balance, we would not advance first. Those would be subject to a more robust public process. So the historic district changes would be just where the owners have consented to inclusion, and I didn't put it in here, but the properties that we're going to remove, and we're removing them because either a historic building has been demolished and there's nothing historic on the site anymore, or if there's a subdivision and the lot doesn't contain, the resulting lot doesn't contain a historic structure. One of the policies in the plan is that we want to sunset the Capital Center Commission and its corresponding overlay district. That's going to take city council approval as well as state general assembly approval, but we know how to go about doing this. Any ordinance that we put in front of you would be subject to ultimately the general assembly acting. So that aspect wouldn't go into effect until the General Assembly acts. But again, it's fairly straightforward. As far as the text goes, the plan calls for eliminating the R2 zone, so we would eliminate that not just from the map, but all regulations. Likewise with the C1 zone. And again, all the regulations of the Capital Center Overlay District would be deleted. Since we'll only have one neighborhood commercial zone, we're going to adjust that zone. Anything that was C1 is now going to be C2. So we're planning to make some adjustments to the dimensional requirements, specifically around setbacks. The setbacks in C1 and C2 are different. Right now, C1 has a 5-foot side yard and 10-foot rear yard. C2 has a 10-foot side yard and 20-foot rear yard. This actually has created some problems where these setbacks are different, especially when it comes to corner lots. So our proposal is to make the side yard setback and the rear yard setback the same at 10 feet. We want to strengthen standards for drive-through uses in the C2 zone. We want to, under some circumstances, to have standards that might allow us to deny drive-through uses in some areas based probably on traffic, but that's something that we have to work on. Our neighborhood commercial zones are areas where we feel there should not be a proliferation of auto repair. So we are proposing to prohibit vehicle repair in the commercial 2 zone C2. That would be new, yeah. Okay, the next one is this idea of we had some discussion about reducing lot sizes in residential zones. Ultimately, we decided against that. But for these areas where there's a proliferation of small lots, sometimes we see applicants wanting to subdivide to create small lots that are in keeping with what's around them. Often those lots are larger because there had been a merger performed in the past, and maybe a merger performed where the city actually required it or wouldn't allow for the lots to be developed separately. We do allow for those lots to be developed separately now, so our language would say if it can be demonstrated based on some sort of city document that lots previously existed but were merged, we would allow for a re-subdivision as long as the resultant lots were no smaller than 2,500 square feet or 25 feet wide. That's pretty small. Anything smaller than that, I think, is out of the spirit of what we're trying to achieve here. Next is we say that we want to allow for different types of development in the R1, R1A, and the R3 zones, multifamily development, row house, and cluster development. So we need to develop the standards for row houses, the amount of land that's required for each row house, and you know how they're parked and so forth. When it comes to cluster and multifamily, this would be for large lots, and what we're working on is trying to figure out what would be the appropriate density in these zones, and also in the R4 zone. We talked about that, having caps on density in the R4 zone. And our general process has been that we know what you're allowed to build on a standard lot of record. So for example, in a 3-family zone, you're allowed to have 3 units on 5,000 square feet. That's about 1,667 square feet of land for every dwelling unit. So one way to think of this is for every increment of 1,667 above that, you could add a dwelling unit. Likewise, in the R1 zone, you're allowed 1 unit on 5,000 square feet, and you could say for every 5,000 square feet, you get 1 unit. But there's some debate about, you know, whether, for example, in R1, we might lower the square footage per dwelling unit as you get bigger. One idea might be that in the R1 zone, you get 1 unit for 5,000 square feet, and then for every 2,500 square feet, say above that, you could get an extra unit. So you could get 2 on 7,500, you could get 3 on 10,000. You know, and it would scale as the lots get bigger. We're still trying to test fit. We're also looking at you know, serious outlier parcels that might be an acre or more. You know, what does that actually mean? Yeah, so we want to be able to come to you with some, you know, some really good numbers and some examples of what this could possibly mean. Okay. In terms of short-term rentals, we propose to require owner occupancy in the R4 zone, just as we do in the R1 and R3 zones. As we often do with the zoning ordinance, we keep track of how well it's working, and we monitor for any interpretations that might you know, technically comply, but we don't think fulfill the spirit of the law. There are some changes in state law. The state keeps moving the goalposts on us, so we have to make some changes there. So a few things that we're working on, for example, the state changed the household definition, so we need to update that. We have some special use permit criteria that are scattered through the ordinance that aren't in the use table, so we need to clean that stuff up. How we measure height from grade has been an interesting discussion we've had lately, and it's raised some issues. So I think we're gonna be revisiting that. when the city forester authorizes the removal of a significant tree, we think the forester should have some ability to require replacement canopy that's more in keeping with the amount of canopy that was lost from the significant tree. So we're looking at some rules around that. So there are just a few other tweaks there. Again, we're going to be back to you in December with actual ordinance language. And then we hope you'll advance that to the council for adoption sometime in the first quarter of 2025. And then we'll be returning in a few months with some of these more challenging issues. As you know, I think you probably know the council inserted language about further restricting where gas stations are allowed in the city. So we need to work on those regulations. The comp plan has language about establishing an ad hoc committee to assist us with beefing up some of our design regulations. So we've got to pull that committee together and start working through those issues. Minimum parking, we talk about it in the comp plan. I think if we tried to do that now, we run the risk of a straightforward ordinance getting bogged down, because parking is always a controversial subject. Student housing, again, something that continues to come up, so we're gonna revisit that. There were some policies added around industrial uses in the city, particularly in the port area. That's going to take some time for us to work on those rules. We want to talk more with you specifically about how we calibrate our development incentives. Under what circumstances do we allow for buildings of greater height? We've talked about rewarding buildings that are highly energy efficient or don't have any burning of fossil fuels. We've had discussions about whether it's appropriate for commercial space to warrant additional height. So we want to talk with you further about that. And then finally, something the council added to the comprehensive plan related to inclusionary zoning. That would be a policy that would mandate for multifamily housing projects that a certain amount of those units be affordable. So the question is that something that we can just mandate and it will happen? Or if we mandate it, but we haven't figured out proper taxation policy and other incentives, will the housing just not get built? So we want to make sure that before we put any mandates on affordable housing in place, that we know that it's actually going to produce housing, period, and especially affordable housing. So that's something I think that is going to be probably a long-term discussion that involves not just zoning, but the incentives that are available and also what our taxation policy is. So those are the issues. Happy to entertain any questions you have now, or happy to talk about any thoughts you might have. But you can look forward to seeing language next month.
Yeah, I think the inclusionary zoning and affordable housing, we had talked about throughout the comp plan process that we want to incentivize it somehow through design incentives and or funding mechanisms. And obviously we don't control those funding mechanisms, but there has to be a way to make it palatable so that it actually gets built. So I think those are all very, very good discussions to have, but I agree they won't happen overnight. As you're talking about parking, reducing parking minimums and the like, and maybe it even goes into like the zoning changes, principal use parking in C2 zones. I think that's like contrary to everything that we've put forward in the comp plan, so I would like to look at that as a potential prohibition, while incentivizing structured parking, in both developments and uses. We need parking, there's no getting around it, but, surface lots are a complete waste of space. They're horrible for our stormwater systems. And that's the other part is, stormwater control. Obviously, we're having more major rain events, which are causing street flooding and the like. We have too much impervious area. Obviously, surface lots contribute to that. If we build a surface lot, it's all impervious. Whereas if we had structured parking with stormwater controls, that would be the ideal scenario. So just a couple of my initial thoughts, but I'm looking forward to all of these discussions continuing. And the design standards are something that I think we've all discussed. We've all had them at meetings. We understand they need to be updated and changed. So give that a thought. Think on that while we're, eating your Thanksgiving dinner this year. Like, what do we want to get from development? Because that's what we're going to be incentivizing. Like do we want all electric? Do we want? Because those are the things that we're gonna be trying to, yeah, exactly. Those are the carrots that we're gonna be putting out there for people, to get, that extra story. And is it a two-tiered system? Is it that you get this base level if you do X, Y, or Z, but these really hard ones, you can get even more, you can get something else, like that's more rewarding. So those are just my thoughts. Thank you for all the work you guys have put in. This wasn't an easy effort. This was a Herculean effort.
Yeah, well, and thank you, and I hope you can make it on Friday, because it really will be a celebration of all the work that we've done in the planning department, but we couldn't have done it without you. All those meetings where, we kind of vetted this document, and then, 5 sessions of public hearing at the council. It really.
I didn't expect those 5 meetings.
Yeah, but and people turned out. So, I really commend everybody who was a part of the process. I don't think anybody came away feeling like they got everything they wanted.
Which means I think we were pretty fair.
Yeah, right.
Everyone was a little disappointed.
Right.
Not one person thought they got everything. We spread out the pain. Anything else before we adjourn this evening? Well, welcome, Sid. Some of these meetings are more interesting, some are less, some are more contentious, some are less, so. Yeah, we came close. All right, everyone, have a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your holiday, and we'll see you next month. Hopefully